Last night, someone walked into my house while I was sleeping upstairs. This morning, I found evidence: a moved chair and open gate scratches on the door lock, but the security footage that should have captured everything gone, erased professionally during a 23-minute window of complete darkness. I drove to an electronics repair shop hoping for answers. The specialist examined it and said with a pale face, "Sir, you shouldn't go home tonight." Yeah, but what he showed me on that screen made my blood run cold. Not because of what I saw, but because of what it meant about the people I trusted most. I made my decision: immediately find all the evidence, no matter where it led, and I would protect what was mine. Before we go any further, I just want to say thank you for being here. If this story pulled you in, take a second to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. I'd also love to know, where in the world are you watching from tonight? Drop your city or country in the comments so we can see how far this story reaches. And one quick note: parts of this narrative have been thoughtfully dramatized for storytelling and educational purposes. Any similarity to actual people or places is entirely coincidental. What matters most is the lesson behind it, and I hope it stays with you. I jolted awake to something that shouldn't have been there. The clock read 2:03 a.m. Consciousness hit me all at once, sharp and immediate, the way your instincts scream danger before logic has a chance to explain why. A grinding noise. Could have been metal scraping wood. Maybe something being dragged over stone. The sound drifted in from outside, somewhere near the back of the property. I remained motionless in the dark, straining to hear. This bedroom, Catherine's and mine for so many years, seemed cavernous now, in its emptiness. These walls still wore the paint we'd chosen together 2 decades back. That same window where she'd greet each morning, cup of coffee in hand, watching the birds flutter by. 2 years had passed since I'd lost her. 2 years, 3 months, 11 days. Though who was keeping track? The noise returned, nearer this time. No question it was coming from my backyard. My pulse thundered in my ears. 67 years on this earth, 4 decades tracking down insurance scams, and I'd developed a sixth sense for trouble. Right now, that sense was blaring like a fire alarm. My hand fumbled for the phone on my nightstand, fingers trembling just enough to notice. The screen's blue glare stung my eyes in the pitch black. Divi, nulla cetri preexpus diena. The house held its breath, just Catherine's antique clock ticking the refrigerator, humming its mechanical song downstairs. Then it came again. This time, crystal clear footfalls. Measured, purposeful. Someone crossing my patio stones. Someone had invaded my backyard. I kicked the blankets aside and rose to my feet, bare soles meeting the chill of hardwood. My gut told me to charge downstairs and face whoever was out there. But 4 decades of investigative work had hammered in a different lesson: never rush in without knowing what you're walking into. I crept to the window and eased back the curtain's edge. My backyard unfolded in darkness, the patio Catherine and I had constructed with our own hands. The fence we'd erected when Liam was navigating high school. That old oak where we'd suspended a tire swing 3 decades past. Everything appeared undisturbed. The motion sensors stayed dark. The shadows revealed nothing. But I trusted what my ears had told me. Half a year back, Russell Parker from next door had practically begged me to get security cameras installed. "Can't afford to take chances anymore, Frank," he'd mentioned during morning coffee. "Living by yourself and all. They've had burglaries just 3 blocks over." I'd pushed back initially. Getting cameras felt like surrendering to weakness. Like broadcasting, I couldn't manage on my own. But Russell wouldn't let it go. And eventually Diane, his wife, who also happened to be my attorney, had weighed in on his side. "Stop being stubborn, Marshall," she'd insisted. "Do it for your own peace of mind." So I'd brought in professionals. 2 units, one watching the front entrance, another monitoring the backyard. The technician had walked me through the phone app, demonstrated how to review past recordings. I'd practically forgotten about them after that. Until tonight. My fingers shook as I launched the security application. The loading felt agonizingly slow. Eventually, the live view materialized, displaying my backyard through the greenish haze of night vision. The patio, the fence line, those lawn chairs I kept telling myself to store away before winter arrived. Everything sat frozen, vacant. But something had changed. One of those chairs had definitely moved. I was dead certain. Just yesterday afternoon, I'd lined them up properly. Catherine had always obsessed over keeping things orderly, and I'd honored that standard. But now, one chair had wandered several feet from its companions, turned at an odd angle facing the house. And that side gate, the passage between front and backyards, hung ajar. Not wide, maybe half a foot. I religiously kept that gate shut, always secured it. Pressure built in my chest. Someone had trespassed in my yard, might still be lurking there. I needed to examine the recorded footage, see what had transpired, see who'd been prowling around while I slept. I perched on the bed's edge phone, clutched in both palms, and found my way to the playback feature. The app dragged every buffering second, stretching into infinity. My investigator's training surfaced automatically catalog everything, collect proof, maintain composure. But composure was slipping through my fingers. The footage finally loaded. I rewound to 2:00 a.m., watched my vacant backyard rendered in infrared. Nothing stirred except tree branches dancing in the night wind. 2:05 a.m. Still empty. 2:10 a.m. The gate remained closed in frame. Everything ordinary. Then, at 2:17 a.m., something shifted. The gate barely moved at first, someone forcing it open from the opposite side. A hesitation. Then a silhouette detached itself from the darkness. Tall figure, moving with confidence, none of the clumsy wavering of someone disoriented or intoxicated. This person knew their destination. I pressed closer to the screen, squinting through my bedroom's blackness. The figure traversed my patio in several quick steps, making a beeline for my back door. Dark clothes hood, concealing their head. Through the camera's night vision, their face became nothing more than a ghostly smudge. They halted at my back door, extended a hand. Testing the handle, verifying if it was secured. My breathing accelerated. I'd locked that door. I always locked it before turning in. Catherine had drilled that ritual into me years ago. Secure the doors, inspect the windows, protect the family. The figure lingered there, perhaps 10 seconds, then retreated a step, angled their head upward, and stared straight into the camera. For one suspended moment, I could nearly distinguish their features. But the night vision bleached everything into grayscale, obliterating detail. All I could discern was the outline of a face, the black hollow of that hood. Then they shifted left, vanishing from the camera's field of view toward the house's side. I waited, eyes locked on the empty patio. My heart hammered so violently I could sense it in my neck. 30 seconds crawled by. A full minute. What were they up to? Why hadn't they left? At 2:45 a.m. the screen died. Not snow, not the fuzzy interference of lost signal, just void. Absolute blackness. I stared at my phone, fear mingling with bewilderment. Had the camera failed? Had we lost power? But the timestamp in the corner kept advancing. 2:45:01, 2:45:02, 2:45:03. The camera was still functioning, but it wasn't capturing anything. I pulled up the system diagnostics. Everything registered as operational. No warnings, no malfunctions. The camera was performing normally, except there was no picture. For the following 23 minutes, my security camera documented nothing except a black void. Then, at 3:08 a.m., the image returned. The patio materialized again in night vision, deserted now. That lawn chair still displaced, the gate still gaping open. Everything looked identical to before, except the camera's perspective had changed. Angled slightly higher, now capturing more sky than ground. Someone had tampered with the camera. My hands had turned to ice. This wasn't some random trespasser. This wasn't some drunk wandering through the wrong property. This was someone who knew about my cameras. Someone who understood how to neutralize them. Someone who'd orchestrated this. I stood and descended the stairs, inspected the back door still secured, the windows all fastened. Everything appeared normal, but when I studied the back door under the kitchen's fluorescent glare, I spotted them. Tiny scratches circling the keyhole. Fresh marks, the brass gleaming, where something had stripped away the aged patina. Someone had attacked the lock, worked on it deliberately. I stared at the black screen on my phone, my coffee going cold on the kitchen counter. The sun had been up for 2 hours, but I hadn't moved from this spot. I'd been rewatching those 23 minutes of darkness over and over, as if staring at the void long enough would make something appear. It didn't. 2:45 a.m. to 3:08 a.m. A perfect black rectangle where evidence should have been, where answers should have been. This wasn't a technical glitch. The timestamp kept running. The system showed no errors. The camera had been working, it just hadn't been recording anything visible, or someone had made sure it wouldn't. I thought about those scratches on my back door lock, the moved lawn chair, the adjusted camera angle. Each detail alone could be explained away. Together, they formed a pattern I'd spent 40 years learning to recognize. Someone had done this deliberately, professionally, and they'd known exactly what they were doing. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts, stopping at Russell Parker's name. Russell had been the one to recommend the security company. He'd know what to do. But then I hesitated. Russell was 72, recovering from hip surgery. The last thing he needed was me dragging him into whatever this was at 7 in the morning. No, I needed someone else. Someone who understood technology. Someone who could tell me if this footage could be recovered or if it was gone forever. Jake Martinez. The name came to me suddenly. Jake ran a tech repair shop downtown, Martinez Tech Repair. We'd served on the neighborhood watch together a few years back before Catherine got sick. He was the guy everyone called when their computer died or their phone got hacked. If anyone could make sense of deleted security footage, it was Jake. I found his number and dialed before I could second-guess myself. 3 rings, then, Martinez Tech Repair. This is Jake. Jake, it's Marshall Blackwell. We were on the neighborhood watch together. Mr. Blackwell, of course. How are you? His voice was warm, genuine. Haven't seen you at the meetings lately. I've been busy. The lie felt hollow. Truth was, I'd stopped going after Catherine died. Couldn't face the sympathetic looks, the careful questions about how I was holding up. Listen, I need your help with something. Security camera footage that's been tampered with. A pause. Tampered with how? Deleted or blocked? I'm not sure. Can you take a look? Bring the system in. I'll see what I can do. 20 minutes later, I was in my car, the DVR unit, heavy on the passenger seat beside me. I'd disconnected it carefully, wrapping the cables the way the installer had shown me. The whole process felt surreal, like evidence collection in one of my old insurance cases, except this time, I was the victim. The drive through Charlotte was quiet. Morning traffic hadn't started yet. I passed the coffee shop where Catherine and I used to meet Liam for Sunday breakfast. Past the park where we'd celebrated Liam's college graduation. Every street held a memory, and today each one felt like a weight pressing down on my chest. By the time I pulled into the parking lot of Martinez Tech Repair, my hands were shaking. Jake was waiting inside the shop empty except for rows of computers and circuit boards lining the walls. He took the DVR from me without a word, his expression professional but curious. "What am I looking for?" he asked, setting it on his workbench. "Last night, between 2:45 and 3:08 a.m., the footage goes black." He plugged in the unit and pulled up the interface on his computer. His fingers flew across the keyboard, navigating through menus I didn't understand. I watched him work, my stomach tight with anxiety. After 10 minutes, he sat back. "Mr. Blackwell, this wasn't an accident." My throat went dry. "What do you mean? Someone accessed your system remotely. See this?" He pointed at lines of code scrolling across his screen. "These are access logs. Someone logged in at 2:44 a.m. using administrator credentials. They didn't just delete the footage, they overwrote it. Professionally? Like they knew exactly what they were doing. The room felt suddenly colder. "Can you recover it?" Jake's expression was grim. "Maybe. They were good, but people always make mistakes. Leave traces. Digital fingerprints." He started typing again, opening windows I couldn't follow. "This is going to take a few hours, maybe more. Why don't you come back around 4? Can you tell me anything else? Anything about who did this?" He shook his head. "Not yet, but Mr. Blackwell?" He looked up at me, something unreadable in his eyes. "Whoever did this had access to your system. Either they hacked it remotely, which is hard, with modern encryption, or what? Or they had your login credentials, your passwords, your access codes." The implication hung in the air between us. Someone close to me. Someone who'd been in my house, who knew my systems, who had the technical knowledge to do this. "I'll call you when I find something," Jake said quietly. I left the shop and sat in my car for a long moment, hands gripping the steering wheel. The morning sun was bright now, people starting their normal days, heading to work, getting coffee, living their lives, while mine was unraveling. I drove home slowly, my mind circling the same questions. Who had access to my security system? Who knew my passwords? Who would want to break into my house and then carefully erase the evidence? The answers that came to me, the ones I kept pushing away, were too terrible to consider. By the time I pulled into my driveway, one thought had crystallized. This wasn't random. This wasn't some stranger picking houses at random. This was personal. And they weren't finished. I walked into my house, the one I'd shared with Catherine for 23 years, the one where we'd raised Liam, the one I'd always felt safe in, and locked the door behind me. For the first time in decades, I didn't feel safe anymore. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Liam. "Hey Dad, just checking in. Everything okay?" I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Everything okay? No, nothing was okay, but I couldn't tell him that. Not yet. Not until I knew what I was dealing with. I typed back, "Fine, talk later." Then I sat at my kitchen table and waited for Jake to call. Because whoever had been in my backyard last night, whoever had erased those 23 minutes, had made one mistake. They'd assumed the deletion was permanent. Jake called at 3:47 p.m. I'd spent the hours in between trying to act normal, making lunch. I couldn't eat, attempting to read the newspaper, staring at the back door, and those scratches around the lock. But my mind kept circling back to one question. Who had access to my security system? Who knew my house well enough to navigate it in the dark? Who would do this? Mr. Blackwell, I've got something. You need to come see this. 20 minutes later, I was back at Martinez Tech Repair. Jake's expression was serious as he gestured me behind the counter. "I recovered most of it," he said. "Took some work, they'd overwritten the files, but data leaves traces. Always does." He pulled up a video file on his monitor. "You're not going to like this." My heart hammered as he hit play. The screen showed my backyard in night vision, the timestamp reading 2:17:04 a.m. For a few seconds, nothing. Then a shadow moved at the edge of the frame, someone climbing over my back fence, not struggling, not hesitating. They dropped into my yard with practiced ease. "Watch," Jake said quietly. The figure was tall, slim, wearing dark clothing and a hood. They walked straight across my patio, like they'd done it 100 times before. No flashlight, no fumbling. They knew exactly where they were going. When they reached my back door, they stopped, and from their pocket they pulled something out. Even through the corrupted footage, I could see what it was. A key. My hands gripped the edge of Jake's desk as I watched the figure insert the key into my lock, turn it, and open my door like they were coming home from work. No forced entry, no broken window, no picking the lock. They had a key to my house. "Jesus," I whispered. The timestamp jumped more corrupted data, but when it came back, it showed 2:25:13 a.m. 8 minutes had passed. The figure emerged from my house, looked around my backyard, then did something that made my blood run cold. They looked directly at the camera. For just a moment, the hood shifted. I could make out part of a face, not clearly, the resolution wasn't good enough, but a jawline the shape of a nose. Then they reached up and adjusted the camera angle, tilting it upward. That's when the feed went completely black. "They knew it was there?" I said, my voice distant to my own ears. "They knew about the camera." "Yeah," Jake said. "And they knew how to access the storage remotely. That's not something you just figure out. That takes knowledge. Or," he paused, "someone told them how." I straightened up, my mind racing. "Jake, can you tell who it is?" He shook his head. "Not from this footage. The corruption's too bad and they kept their face covered mostly. But Mr. Blackwell?" He chose his words carefully. "Whoever this is, they had a key. That's not a random burglar. That's someone who either has legitimate access to your house or someone you gave a key to." The word hung in the air. Someone I gave a key to. I thought about my house, about the locks Catherine and I had installed 23 years ago. We'd been so careful about keys, one for each of us, one spare in the garage for emergencies. After Catherine died, I'd given that spare to my son Liam, just in case something happened to me, just in case I needed help. Only 2 people besides me had keys to that house, Liam and his wife, Lauren. "I need a copy of this," I said, my voice hollow. Jake was already burning it to a USB drive. "I figured, and Mr. Blackwell, you should probably change your locks, today, if you can." I took the drive and drove home in a fog. The afternoon sun felt wrong, too bright, too cheerful for what I'd just learned. The neighborhood looked the same as always. Kids playing basketball, someone washing their car, Mrs. Patterson walking her corgi, everything normal while my world collapsed. When I got home, I went straight to the back door. In the daylight, I could see the scratches more clearly now. Fresh ones, the metal still bright, where a key or something had scraped against it, not from picking the lock. From a key that didn't quite fit right, or from someone using it in the dark without being careful. I stood there for a long time, staring at those marks. My son wouldn't do this. Liam was a good man. I'd raised him right. He'd never break into my house, never erase security footage, never. But then I thought about the last 6 months, small things I'd noticed and dismissed. Papers on my desk rearranged. Bank statements in a different order than Catherine had kept them. Lauren asking questions about my retirement accounts, about my life insurance. Liam getting defensive when I asked about meeting Lauren's family, about her past, about Tennessee where she claimed to be from. The pieces I'd been ignoring suddenly formed a picture I didn't want to see. I pulled out my phone and looked at Liam's contact. My thumb hovered over the call button. What would I even say? "Hey son, did you break into my house last night?" It sounded crazy, paranoid. The suspicions of an old man who had lost his wife and was seeing threats everywhere. Except the footage was real. The key was real. The erased files were real. Someone had been in my house. Someone with a key only family members had. My phone buzzed. Liam. "Hey Dad, Lauren, and I want to stop by tomorrow. She's been worried about you. Thinks we should help you organize some of Mom's old paperwork. What do you think?" I stared at the message. Organize Mom's old paperwork, Catherine's files, the ones I kept in her old craft room, the room where I stored important documents, bank statements, insurance policies, my will. The same room the intruder had been in for 8 minutes. My hands shook as I typed back, "Sure, tomorrow works." But my mind was screaming. I sat at my kitchen table as evening fell, the USB drive from Jake in front of me. I plugged it into my laptop and watched the footage again. And again. And again. That figure climbing my fence. Walking to my door with confidence. Using a key. Adjusting the camera afterward. Someone who knew my house. Someone I trusted. My son wouldn't do this. Would he? But then I thought about 40 years investigating insurance fraud. About all the cases where families destroyed each other over money, sons stealing from fathers, daughters emptying their mothers' accounts, love twisted into greed. I'd seen it all. I just never thought I'd see it in my own home. The sun set. The kitchen grew dark around me. And I sat there thinking about that key, about those 8 minutes, about tomorrow, when Liam and Lauren would come to help me organize paperwork. My son wouldn't do this. But someone had. And I was going to find out who. I sat at the kitchen table as darkness settled around me, the USB drive from Jake in front of me, like a piece of evidence I wasn't ready to examine. But my mind wouldn't stop working backward through the last 6 months, pulling at threads I'd been ignoring. Small things. Things I'd dismissed as forgetfulness or coincidence. Papers on my desk that had been moved, not ransacked, just subtly out of place. Bank statements in a different order. My insurance folder open when I remembered closing it. I'd blame my age, told myself things slip when you live alone. But now, I wondered. Then there were Lauren's questions, always casual, wrapped in concern. "How's your retirement fund? Marshall, Liam and I worry about you." Or, "Do you still have that life insurance from work? Those old policies sometimes aren't worth much." At the time, I'd thought she was being thoughtful. Now those questions felt different, like she was taking inventory. And then there was Tennessee. Lauren always said she was from Knoxville. Grew up there, went to high school there. I'd believed her until about 3 months ago, when we were watching a Volunteers game. I mentioned Calhoun's, a famous restaurant on the Tennessee River. Every person from Knoxville knows Calhoun's. She'd looked at me blankly. "I don't think I know that one. It's right on the river. Been there forever." "Oh well, Knoxville's a big city." She'd changed the subject quickly. I'd started paying attention after that, her accent or lack of one. When Lauren was calm, her voice was neutral, almost generic. But I'd heard her angry once during an argument with Liam in my driveway. Her voice had gone sharp and clipped, but there was no southern softness, no drawl, nothing suggesting 18 years in Tennessee. I'd mentioned it to Liam. "Your wife doesn't have much of an accent." He'd shrugged. "She worked hard to lose it. Said people don't take you seriously in business if you sound too country." Maybe. But in my experience, an accent comes back when you're tired or angry. Lauren's never did. Because maybe it was never there to begin with. The phone call had come that afternoon at 4:47 p.m. before I'd gone to Jake's shop. "Mr. Blackwell, this is Nicole Harper from Wells Fargo. I'm calling about a request to update your beneficiary information." My hand had stilled on the coffee pot. "What request?" "Your son Liam submitted paperwork 3 days ago, requesting changes to your life insurance beneficiary and access to your accounts. We're required to verify with you before processing." "I didn't authorize any changes." Silence. "Mr. Blackwell, are you aware your son has power of attorney for your accounts?" The power of attorney. I'd signed it 2 years ago after Catherine died. I'd had a health scare, and my lawyer recommended it. Just in case something happens and you can't make decisions, Liam can handle things. It was for medical emergencies, hospital decisions, not this. That was for medical purposes? I said, my voice tight. Not financial? Sir, the document we have grants broad authority. It allows your son to make financial decisions on your behalf, including beneficiary changes and account management. My hands had gone cold. Stop any changes right now. Nothing gets changed without me physically present. Do you understand? Of course, I'll flag your account immediately. And, sir, you might want to come in tomorrow. There are other attempted transactions we should discuss. I'd ended the call and stood there in my kitchen trying to understand. Liam had tried to change my life insurance beneficiary. Liam had tried to access my accounts. Liam, who I'd trusted enough to give legal authority. Liam, who might have given someone that key. Now, hours later, with Jake's USB drive in front of me, all those small things assembled into a picture I didn't want to see. The moved papers someone had been looking through my files. The questions someone had been assessing what I had. The bank attempt someone was making their move. And whoever used that key at 2:17 this morning had known exactly where my camera was. This wasn't random. This was planned. This was family. I looked at the clock, nearly 8 p.m. The bank had closed hours ago, but tomorrow morning I'd be there when the doors opened. I'd find out exactly what other attempted transactions Nicole Harper wanted to discuss. I'd learn how long this had been going on. 40 years as an insurance adjuster had taught me one thing: when the evidence doesn't line up, someone's usually hiding something. I'd spent my career investigating fraud, false claims, staged accidents, elaborate schemes. I'd seen families destroy each other over money. I just never thought I'd be investigating my own son. The question that had been circling my mind all evening finally crystallized into something clear and cold. If Liam was willing to do this, how far would he go? I thought about that figure in the darkness moving through my backyard with purpose, about the key turning in my lock, about someone standing in my house for 8 minutes doing God knows what. And I thought about tomorrow. Tomorrow I'd get answers. Tomorrow I'd see the evidence in black and white. Tomorrow I'd know the truth about what my son and the woman he married had been planning. But tonight I sat in the darkness with one thought that wouldn't let me go. If I couldn't trust my own family, who could? I stood up, my joints protesting, and walked to the back door one more time, checked the lock, looked out at the backyard where someone had climbed my fence just last night. The patio stones gleamed in the moonlight, peaceful and still. Everything looked normal, safe, but I knew better now. Tomorrow morning, I'd be at that bank when the doors opened. And then I'd find out just how wrong I'd been about the people I thought I knew. I was waiting in the Wells Fargo parking lot at 8:45 the next morning, watching the employees arrive and unlock the doors. The moment the lights came on, I was out of my truck and walking toward the entrance. The young woman at the front desk looked up with her practiced smile. "Good morning, sir. How can we help you today?" "I need to see Nicole Harper, now." Something in my voice must have registered because her smile faltered. "Do you have an appointment? Tell her Marshall Blackwell is here. She'll want to see me." 5 minutes later, I was sitting across from Nicole Harper in a small office off the main floor. She was younger than I'd expected from her voice on the phone, maybe mid-30s with sharp eyes, and the kind of professional demeanor that comes from years of dealing with people's money problems. "Mr. Blackwell," she extended her hand. "I'm glad you came in." I didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Show me everything." She pulled up my accounts on her computer, angling the screen so I could see. 3 weeks ago, your son came in with power of attorney documentation. Everything appeared legitimate. It had your signature. It was notarized. It gave him authority to manage your accounts. What did he try to do? Nicole clicked through several screens. If first he attempted to change the beneficiary on your life insurance policy from estate to his wife Lauren Blackwell, that change would have meant that upon your death, the $500,000 policy would go directly to her, bypassing probate entirely. $500,000. I'd set that up after Catherine died, meant it to cover funeral expenses and leave something for Liam. Now, my own son was trying to redirect it to his wife. What else? He requested access to your checking and savings accounts, said you were having memory issues and he needed to help manage your finances. He wanted to add himself and his wife as joint account holders. My hands tightened on the armrests. Joint account holders meant they could drain everything without my knowledge or permission. Did he succeed? No. Our policy requires verification calls for any major changes when power of attorney is involved, especially for clients over 65. That's why I called you yesterday. But Mr. Blackwell, she hesitated. He was very convincing. If we hadn't had that extra protocol in place, these changes would have gone through. I want everything blocked, right now. Already done as of yesterday. I've placed a hard freeze on your accounts. No changes can be made without you physically present with valid ID. She pulled out a form. But I need you to sign this official revocation. It states that no one, including Liam Blackwell, has authority to make changes to your accounts, regardless of what documents they present. I signed it without hesitation, my signature sharp and angry across the page. Nicole watched me carefully. Mr. Blackwell, I have to ask, do you feel safe at home? If there's financial exploitation happening, there could be other concerns. The question landed harder than she probably intended. I'm handling it. We can provide resources, elder advocacy services, legal referrals. I said I'm handling it. The words came out sharper than I meant. I took a breath. But thank you for calling, for stopping this. She nodded slowly. I've documented everything in your file. If you need these records for legal purposes, we can provide certified copies. She paused. I've been doing this job for 10 years. I've seen a lot of financial abuse cases. Most of them are family members. And most of them start exactly like this: small requests, legitimate-looking documents someone the victim trusts. I'm not a victim, I said quietly. No, she agreed. You're not. Because you came in. You ask questions. A lot of people don't. She stood, extending her hand again. Be careful, Mr. Blackwell. People who are willing to forge documents and manipulate bank accounts, they don't usually stop there. I left the bank with a folder full of printouts showing exactly what Liam had tried to do, timestamps and all. The evidence was right there in black and white. My son had walked into this bank 3 weeks ago and tried to steal my money, tried to redirect my life, insurance, tried to position himself to control everything I had. I sat in my truck for a moment, engine running, staring at those papers. Then I pulled out my phone and called Liam. He answered on the second ring. Dad, is everything okay? We need to talk. Tonight, 7 o'clock, my house. Sure. About what? Bring Lauren. There was a pause. Dad, what's this about? 7 o'clock, Liam. Don't be late. I hung up before he could say anything else. My hands were shaking not from fear but from anger, from the betrayal of it, from the calculated coldness of walking into a bank and trying to steal from your own father. I had 6 hours until they arrived. 6 hours to prepare for a conversation I never thought I'd have to have. 6 hours to figure out how to confront my own son with the evidence of what he'd tried to do. I looked down at the papers in the passenger seat. Liam's signature on the forms. The date 3 weeks ago, right around the time Lauren had asked all those questions about my insurance at dinner. Right around the time I'd noticed my papers being moved. This had been planned, carefully, methodically. But they'd made one mistake. They'd underestimated me. They'd thought I was just another lonely old man who wouldn't notice, wouldn't question, wouldn't fight back. They were wrong. I started the truck and headed home, already thinking through what I needed to say, what I needed to ask. The folder of bank documents sat on the seat beside me like ammunition. Tonight at 7 o'clock, I'd find out exactly how far this went. I'd find out who my son really was. And I'd find out if there was anything left of the boy I'd raised, or if that person was gone entirely. 6 hours to prepare. I planned to use every minute. The doorbell rang at exactly 7 o'clock. I'd spent the afternoon going over the bank documents, rehearsing what I'd say, thinking through every angle the way I used to prepare for depositions, back when I handled the bigger claims. But when I opened the door, I wasn't prepared for what I saw. Liam stood there looking nervous, avoiding my eyes. Lauren beside him, perfectly composed in a navy dress, her smile just a little too bright. And behind them, a third person I'd never seen before, a man in his 50s wearing an expensive suit and carrying a leather briefcase. Dad, Liam started, "This is Kenneth Wallace." The man extended his hand with practiced smoothness. "I'm an estate planning consultant. Liam and Lauren asked me to come along tonight. I hope that's all right." I didn't take his hand. 40 years of evaluating people for a living had given me a pretty good sense of when something didn't add up, and everything about this man, his too confident smile, the way he'd inserted himself into the introduction, the expensive briefcase for what was supposed to be a family conversation, set off alarms. "I don't recall inviting you," I said. Dad, please. Liam's voice had that pleading tone I remembered from his teenage years. Kenneth's just here to help explain some things. We thought having a professional present might make this easier. Easier for who? Kenneth's smile never wavered. Mr. Blackwell, I understand you might be feeling defensive. That's completely natural. But Liam and Lauren are concerned about you, and sometimes having an objective third party can come in. I stepped back not because I wanted Kenneth there, but because I wanted to see how this played out. And because I'd learned a long time ago that you learn more from watching people lie to your face than you do from shutting them out. They filed into my living room. Kenneth made straight for my coffee table, setting down his briefcase and pulling out a folder of documents before anyone had even sat down. The smooth efficiency of it bothered me, like he'd done this before. Many times. Coffee? I asked, playing the role of gracious host, even though my hands were itching to throw them all out. We're fine, Lauren said quickly. Too quickly, like she wanted to get through this and leave. We all sat. Kenneth spread papers across my coffee table with the practiced movements of a salesman laying out his pitch. I recognized some of the forms: power of attorney documents, beneficiary designation, forms property transfer papers. Mr. Blackwell? Kenneth began his voice, taking on that careful, patronizing tone people use when they think they're talking to someone who doesn't understand. At your age, proper. Planning is essential. Liam and Lauren have expressed concern about your ability to manage your financial affairs independently, and my ability, what Kenneth means. Lauren jumped in her voice, honey sweet. Is that we worry about you, Marshall. Living alone at your age with all these accounts and properties to manage, it's a lot. We just want to help lighten the burden. By changing my life insurance beneficiary to you, the room went silent. Liam's face went pale. Lauren's smile froze. Kenneth's eyes sharpened his salesman persona, slipping just a fraction. Dad, I can explain. By trying to make yourselves joint account holders. I continued, my voice steady. By walking into my bank 3 weeks ago with power of attorney documents and trying to get control of my accounts. Mr. Blackwell? Kenneth's voice had lost some of its warmth. I think there may be some confusion about. There's no confusion. I pulled out the folder from Wells Fargo and set it on the table over his papers. I went to the bank this morning. I have copies of everything Liam tried to do, timestamps, signatures, all of it. Liam's mouth opened and closed. Lauren's hand tightened on his arm, but she recovered quickly, her face rearranging itself into an expression of wounded concern. Marshall, we were only trying to help. You've been so distracted lately, forgetting things. I leaned forward. Funny because my memory's just fine. Good enough to remember someone entering my house at 2 a.m, someone with a key. Another silence, heavier this time. I watched their faces carefully. Liam's confusion looked genuine, but Lauren's eyes had gone cold for just a second before the concern mask slipped back on. 2 a.m. Liam looked between me and Lauren. What are you talking about? Security footage. I let that hang in the air. Someone climbed my fence, used a key to enter my house, and then erased the camera footage. Someone who knew exactly where the camera was. Kenneth stood abruptly. Mr. Blackwell, I think perhaps we should reconvene when you're feeling more. I know exactly how I'm feeling. I stood too, and suddenly the living room felt smaller. I feel like I'm being robbed. By my own family, and by whoever you are. Dad, that's not. I blocked everything at the bank this morning. I continued ignoring Liam. Every account, every policy, every document. Nothing can be changed without me physically present with my ID. Your power of attorney revoked. Whatever you three were planning, it's over. Kenneth's professional mask cracked. His jaw tightened. His eyes went cold, and for just a moment, I saw something that looked a lot like anger. Then he smiled again, but it didn't reach his eyes. Well, he said, gathering his papers with sharp, frustrated movements. It seems we're at an impasse. Perhaps after you've had time to reconsider, get out. The words came out quiet but absolute. Kenneth stopped mid-movement. Lauren stood, pulling Liam up with her. Marshall, you're making a mistake. Out, all of you, now. Liam looked like he wanted to say something, his mouth opening and closing, but Lauren's hand on his arm steered him toward the door. Kenneth followed his briefcase clutched tight, his professional composure cracking around the edges. I walked them to the door and watched as they got into Liam's car, a tense, silent group. As they pulled away, I noticed something white on the porch, Kenneth's business card fallen from his pocket or his briefcase. I picked it up. Kenneth Wallace, Pinnacle Estate Services, LLC, with a phone number and address in Charlotte. Back inside, I sat at my computer and typed the name into Google. The company website looked professional enough, smooth photos, polished text about protecting families and planning futures. But something about it felt wrong. The testimonials were generic. The address was a P.O. box, and when I clicked on the About Us section, there were no actual names besides Kenneth's no credentials, listed no professional licensing numbers. I dug deeper, checking the Better Business Bureau. No listing, searching for reviews outside their website. Nothing. Like the company barely existed outside that one polished webpage. Then I found something. A forum post from 2 years ago, someone warning about a company called Pinnacle Estate Services that had tried to scam their elderly mother. The post had been deleted, but Google's cache still showed it. Professional looking, very convincing, almost lost everything. My hands went cold. This wasn't just Liam and Lauren trying to take advantage. This was organized. This was professional. Kenneth Wallace wasn't just helping my son steal from me. He was running some kind of operation, and my family had walked right into it. Or maybe they'd invited him in. I stared at the business card, at the name that now felt less like a person and more like a threat. Then I did what any insurance adjuster would do when faced with potential fraud. I started documenting everything. Russell Parker showed up at my door the next morning with a thermos of coffee and a concerned expression I'd seen on his face before, usually when he was checking on neighbors after storms. Frank, he didn't wait for an invitation, just walked past me into the kitchen. Saw 3 people leaving here last night. Looked tense. You okay? I'd known Russell for 15 years. He was the kind of neighbor who noticed things, who you were when your routine changed if something felt off. Right now, I was grateful for that. I'm not okay, I said, but I'm handling it. Talk to me. So I did. I told him about the camera footage, the bank fraud, Liam and Lauren, and the man named Kenneth Wallace. I showed him the business card, the Google search results, the bank documents. Russell listened without interrupting, his face getting harder with each detail. When I finished, he set down his coffee cup with deliberate care. Frank, you need a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, a real one who deals with this kind of thing. I know. I just don't know where to start. Diane Foster. He pulled out his phone. Handled my sister's estate case 2 years ago, when her husband's family tried to pull some similar garbage. She doesn't mess around and she doesn't lose. 20 minutes later, I had an appointment for that afternoon. Diane Foster's office was in uptown Charlotte, in one of those glass buildings that looked like they cost more per square foot than my entire house. The receptionist led me to a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Diane herself was maybe 50, sharp-eyed and direct in a way that reminded me of the best supervisors I'd worked with. No time wasted on small talk. Mr. Blackwell? She shook my hand firmly. Russell called ahead. Said, you're dealing with family financial exploitation. Tell me everything. I laid it out, the timeline, the evidence, the players. She took notes on a legal pad, her pen moving quickly, stopping me occasionally to ask specific questions. When I showed her the bank documents, she studied them with the focus of someone who'd seen this before. This is textbook elder financial abuse, she said finally. And it's more common than you'd think. Family members, professional fraudsters, or, like in your case, both working together. The words landed with unexpected weight. Elder abuse sounded clinical, like something that happened to other people. Not to me. Not to someone who'd spent 40 years making sound decisions, evaluating risk, staying sharp. Diane must have seen something in my face because her expression softened slightly. Mr. Blackwell, this isn't about your capability. It's about trust. They targeted you because you trusted them. That's not a weakness. It's what makes you human. I nodded, not quite believing it, but appreciating the effort. Here's what we're going to do. She pulled out a fresh legal pad. At first, we file protective orders, legal documentation that prevents them from accessing your property or accounts. Second, we get a notarized capacity declaration. That's a formal assessment proving you're of sound mind and fully capable of managing your affairs. It'll make it nearly impossible for them to claim incompetence later. Can they claim that? They can try. That's usually the next move when financial manipulation fails. Argue the person is incapable of making decisions, petition for guardianship. We're going to cut that off before it starts. She walked me through the process, paperwork, assessments, timelines. It was thorough, strategic, exactly what I needed to hear. What about the camera footage? I asked. The person with the key, we'll include that in the protective order filing. Breaking and entering evidence tampering, those are serious. And Mr. Blackwell, she looked at me directly. This Kenneth Wallace, his company. I'm going to have my investigator look into it. If he's running a broader operation, you might not be the only victim. The thought was somehow both disturbing and oddly reassuring. Not alone in being targeted, not special in being foolish enough to trust. We spent another hour going over details, signing initial documents, planning next steps. By the time I left, I had a folder full of papers, and something I hadn't felt since seeing that camera footage, Hope. I was almost to my truck when my phone rang. Diane. Mr. Blackwell, one more thing. I need you to think about something. Her voice was different now, more careful. Is your son the one leading this, or is someone else pulling his strings? I stood in the parking garage, keys in hand, thinking about Liam's face last night. The confusion when I mentioned the break-in, the way Lauren's hand had tightened on his arm, the way Kenneth had taken control of the conversation. I don't know, I said honestly, but I'm going to find out. Good, because knowing who's really in charge changes how we fight this. Be careful, Mr. Blackwell, and call me if anything else happens. I drove home thinking about that question. Liam had always been easily influenced by friends in high school, by coworkers in his 20s, by Lauren since he'd married her. But was he just weak, or was he actively complicit? Was he being used, or was he using me? The answer mattered, not just legally, but personally. Because somewhere under all this betrayal and anger, he was still my son. And part of me, the part that remembered teaching him to ride a bike, helping with homework, walking him down the aisle at his wedding, still wanted to believe there was something worth saving. But another part, the part that had spent 40 years spotting fraud, knew better than to let sentiment cloud judgment. I'd find out the truth, and then I'd decide what to do with it. I pulled into my driveway just after 4 that afternoon, my mind still processing everything Diane had said about protective orders and capacity declarations. But before I could even turn off the engine, Russell was crossing the street, waving with an urgency that made my stomach drop. Frank, he was at my window before I got the door open. Black Lexus, been parked down the street for 2 hours, tinted windows, just sitting there. I followed his gesture. 3 houses down on the opposite side of the street sat a black Lexus sedan, with windows so dark I couldn't see inside. As I watched, I could feel eyes on me from behind that glass. You think it's them? Russell asked quietly. Only one way to find out. I started toward the car, but Russell caught my arm. Don't. Not directly. He pulled out his phone. Jordan's inside. Kid's good with this kind of thing. Jordan Parker appeared a minute later with Russell's dog, a golden retriever, that immediately pulled toward the Lexus like he'd been trained for exactly this moment. Jordan was maybe 25, wearing a college hoodie, and Jean's phone already in his hand. We watched from my driveway as he let the dog lead him past the black car, pausing while the dog sniffed a mailbox. To anyone watching it, looked completely natural. Jordan's phone stayed low casual, but I saw the quick movements of someone taking photos. The Lexus didn't move, didn't start. Whoever was inside just sat there letting themselves be photographed. That bothered me more than anything, the confidence of it. Jordan circled back the dog, trotting happily beside him. Got it, he said, when he reached us already swiping through his phone. Plate's clear as day. Give me a sec. He had the DMV information pulled up in under a minute, some app I'd never heard of that his friend at the motor vehicle office had given him access to. Vehicle registered to... Jordan's expression changed as he read. Pinnacle Estate Services, LLC, Charlotte address. The world seemed to tilt slightly. Russell looked at me, understanding dawning on his face. That's Kenneth Wallace's company, I said. The man who showed up at my house last night. They're watching you, Russell said flatly. Frank, this isn't just family trying to get at your money. This is organized. He was right. Liam and Lauren trying to manipulate bank accounts was one thing. But a professional surveillance operation, a registered company, a man in an expensive suit who knew exactly how to work the system, this was something else entirely. I need to call Diane, I said, already pulling out my phone. Do it from inside, Russell advised. And Frank, keep your doors locked, all of them. I spent the rest of the afternoon on the phone with Diane, explaining about the Lexus, about Jordan's photo, about the Pinnacle Estate Services registration. She told me to forward everything and promised to have her investigator dig deeper. This confirms what I suspected, she said. Kenneth Wallace isn't just helping your son. He's running an operation. You're probably not the first elderly person he's targeted, and you won't be the last unless we stop him. The words should have scared me. Instead, they made me angry. These people thought they could intimidate me, could sit outside my house and watch me like I was prey. They were wrong. By 7 that evening, the Lexus was gone. But I knew better than to feel relieved. Surveillance doesn't stop just because you can't see it. I checked every lock twice before going to bed. Set my phone on the nightstand with the security camera app open. Jake had installed a second camera at the front door after recovering that first footage. I lay there in the dark, listening to the house settle, wondering if I'd ever feel safe here again. At 3:17 a.m., my phone buzzed with a motion alert. I grabbed it, my heart already racing, and pulled up the camera feed. Someone was standing at my front door, not trying to break in, not crouching or hiding, just standing there, perfectly still, looking directly at the camera like they knew I was watching. The porch light caught enough detail for me to see tall, slim build, dark jacket. The same general shape as the figure from the backyard footage. But this time, as I watched, they raised one hand and knocked. 3 slow, deliberate knocks that echoed through my house like a heartbeat. Then they stepped back, looked at the camera one more time, and walked away into the darkness. I sat frozen in bed, staring at my phone screen, watching the empty porch. My security system recorded it all. The approach, the knock, the retreat, all of it captured in perfect digital clarity. But what chilled me most wasn't that someone had come to my door at 3 a.m. It was that they'd wanted me to know they were there. This wasn't about stealing anymore. This was a message, and I had no idea what it meant. The face on my phone screen at 3:17 a.m. was Liam. For a moment, I just stared, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. My son, standing at my front door in the middle of the night. The figure who'd knocked 3 times and walked away, it had been him. I was down the stairs and at the door before I could think it through. Liam stood on the porch looking like he'd aged 10 years since I'd last seen him 2 nights ago. His hair was messed up, his eyes red and swollen. He'd been crying. "Dad?" His voice cracked. "I need to talk, without Lauren." I pulled him inside and locked the door behind us. We sat at the kitchen table with coffee neither of us really wanted. Liam's hands wrapped around the mug like he needed something to hold on to. For a long time he didn't speak, just stared into the dark liquid like he might find answers there. "She's lying," he finally said, "about everything." "I think God, Dad. I don't even know what I think anymore." "Tell me what happened." He took a shaky breath. 2 days ago, Lauren asked me to take her laptop to get fixed, said it was running slow. I brought it home, first, thought maybe I could just clear some cache files, save us the money. When I opened it, he stopped rubbing his face with both hands. There were photos, lots of photos, of her, but not her. Does that make sense? Not yet, keep going. She was with different people, different families, and the files, they were saved under a different name, not Lauren. Vanessa something. I thought maybe it was old from before we met, but the dates were recent, last year, 2 years ago. His voice rose slightly, panic creeping in. "Dad, who is she?" My hands tightened on my own mug, the laptop. He'd found something on her laptop, something she didn't want him to see. "Did you ask her about it?" "Yeah." He laughed bitterly. She got furious, said I was invading her privacy, that I was paranoid controlling, said if I really loved her, I wouldn't question her. He looked up at me, and I saw the confusion of a man whose entire reality was crumbling. And maybe she's right. Maybe I am paranoid. Maybe... Liam, stop. He fell silent. "What else?" I asked quietly. "Kenneth showed up the next day. I didn't call him, Lauren did. He took me aside, said you were the real problem, that you were getting confused, forgetting things, that these accusations about the bank and the house were signs of paranoia. He said I needed to protect Lauren from your delusions." Liam's voice broke. "And I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe you were just... I wanted there to be a simple explanation." "But you didn't believe him?" "No." He shook his head. "Because I know you, Dad. I've known you my whole life, and you don't forget things. You don't make up stories. You spent 40 years spotting fraud for a living." He met my eyes. "So either everyone's lying to me, or I've been lying to myself." The kitchen was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. Outside, the first hints of dawn were starting to lighten the sky. "Liam, I need you to listen carefully. Lauren's laptop, do you still have access to it?" "She took it back, reformatted it," she said, "to fix it." "Of course she did. Evidence destroyed before anyone else could see it. But you saw the files, the photos, the different name, Vanessa Moore." The name came out like he'd been holding it in, waiting to say it out loud to someone who might believe him. That's what I saw, Vanessa Moore. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Another name, another identity. This wasn't just about stealing money. This was something else entirely. "What do you want to do?" I asked. Liam looked at me helplessly. "I don't know. She's my wife, 4 years dad. We have a life together. How do I just—" He stopped. "But if she's lying, if Kenneth's lying, if all of this is some kind of— I don't know what to do." I reached across the table and gripped his shoulder. "We figure it out, together. But Liam, I need you to understand something. The people you're involved with, they're not just trying to steal from me. There's surveillance, there's an organization, there's a pattern. This is bigger than family drama. What are you saying?" "I'm saying be careful. Act normal around Lauren. Don't let on that you told me anything. And while you do that, I'm going to find out who she really is." He nodded slowly, understanding dawning. "You want me to spy on her. I want you to protect yourself and help me protect both of us." I paused. "Can you do that?" "Yeah." His voice was stronger now. "Yeah, I can do that." We sat there a while longer as the sky outside slowly turned from black to gray. Liam finished his coffee and stood to leave, looking more steady than when he'd arrived, but still carrying the weight of everything he'd learned. At the door, he turned back. "Dad, I'm sorry. For all of it. The bank stuff, bringing Kenneth here, not believing you sooner. We'll deal with that later. Right now, just be smart. Be careful." He nodded and walked out into the pre-dawn darkness. I watched until his taillights disappeared around the corner, then closed and locked the door. I'd gotten my son back. That should have felt like a victory. But standing in my quiet house as morning approached, I realized I'd lost something else, my certainty about what we were dealing with. This wasn't just elder abuse. This wasn't just a family trying to steal an inheritance. This was something organized, something professional, something that involved false identities and surveillance, and a woman who'd been living a lie for years. And somewhere in all of it, my son had been just as much a victim as I was. The question was, how deep did this go? And who else was involved? I had a name now. Vanessa Moore. It wasn't much, but it was more than I'd had last night. And tomorrow today, really, I'd start finding answers. 2 days after Liam's midnight visit, my phone rang while I was making lunch. "Dad!" Liam's voice was careful, measured. "Lauren just asked me to take her laptop to get fixed. She says it's running slow again. Should I do it?" We'd planned this. Liam would act normal, watch for opportunities. This was the first one. "Take it to Jake Martinez," I said. "Tell him I sent you." An hour later, my phone rang again. "Jake. Mr. Blackwell, you need to get down here, now." I was in my truck before he'd even hung up. When I walked into Martinez Tech Repair, Jake was standing behind his counter with an expression I'd never seen on him before, somewhere between shocked and angry. "Liam left about 20 minutes ago," he said. "Told me you'd want me to look at this carefully." He gestured to the laptop open on his workstation. "Mister, Blackwell, your daughter-in-law, isn't who she says she is." He turned the screen toward me, and my world tilted. The laptop was open to a folder of photos, dozens of them. And in every single one, I saw Lauren, but not the Lauren I knew. These photos showed her with different people, different families, different settings. In one, she was posed with an elderly couple at what looked like a holiday dinner, all smiles and warm embraces. In another, she stood with a man and 2 teenage boys in front of a house I'd never seen. "Who are these people?" I asked. "I don't know, but look at this." Jake clicked to another folder. The files were labeled with dates and names, not Lauren Blackwell. Vanessa Moore, Ohio, 2017 to 2018. Jessica Palmer, Cincinnati, 2019. Lauren Blackwell, Charlotte, 2020 to present. My hands gripped the edge of his desk. She's done this before, multiple times from what I'm seeing. Jake opened another window, showing email accounts. "She's got 3 different email addresses saved in here. Jessica.Palmer, Vanessa.Moore.Personal. The Lauren.Blackwell one is the newest. What else?" Jake pulled up a spreadsheet. "Financial records. She kept them all on here. I guess she didn't think anyone would ever see this laptop." He pointed at the screen. "Look at the pattern. Ohio, 2018. $42,000 deposit in March, account emptied by June. Tennessee, 2068,000 in January, gone by April. And here." He scrolled down. "Georgia 2022, 31,000, deposited withdrawn 3 months later." The room felt like it was spinning. Those weren't just numbers. Those were families. People like me. People who'd trusted someone, taken them in, maybe given them power of attorney, or added them to accounts only to watch everything disappear. Mr. Blackwell? Jake's voice sounded distant. You okay? I wasn't okay. I was staring at evidence that my son had married a professional con artist, that the woman who'd been coming to my house for 4 years asking me about my finances, smiling at family dinners, was someone who'd done this at least 3 times before, maybe more. Can you copy all of this? My voice came out rough. Already done. Jake held up a USB drive. Every file, every photo, every email. It's all here. But, Mr. Blackwell, there's something else you need to know. What? The travel records? She's got airline confirmations, hotel reservations, all saved. Ohio, Tennessee, Georgia, but also Nevada, Florida, California. And the dates overlap. Some of these trips were taken while she was supposedly living in Tennessee, while she was supposedly working a job there. She was running multiple cons at once. That's what it looks like. Jake's expression was grim. This isn't some desperate person making bad decisions. This is organized, professional. She's been doing this for years. I took the USB drive, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it. Thank you for calling me, for all of this. Mr. Blackwell, you should go to the police. I'm calling my lawyer first. I walked out to my truck and sat there for a moment, just breathing. Then I pulled out my phone and called Diane Foster. She answered on the second ring. Marshall, what's wrong? We have a bigger problem than I thought. I could hear my voice shaking. Lauren, my daughter-in-law, she's not who she says she is. She's done this before, multiple times. Different families, different states, different names. There was a pause. What kind of evidence do you have? Everything? Photos, financial records, email accounts, travel history. All digital. Jake Martinez pulled it off her laptop. Don't let that laptop out of your sight. Ann Marshall. Her voice sharpened with urgency. Bring everything to my office. Now. We need to move on this before anyone realizes what you found. Before I reveal what Diane uncovered next, I need to know you're still here with me. If you've followed Marshall this far, comment 217 below the time everything began, so I know you're paying attention. And a gentle note before we continue, the next part of this story includes dramatized elements woven in for narrative and educational impact. If this type of storytelling isn't for you, this is a perfectly fine place to pause. Diane's office felt different the second time. Less refuge, more war room. I handed her the USB drive at 4:30 that afternoon. She plugged it into her laptop without a word, her expression hardening as she clicked through Jake's files. The photos, the emails, the financial records spanning 3 states and 4 years. This is beyond elder abuse, she said finally. This is organized fraud. She reached for her phone. I'm calling someone. The someone was Sarah Mitchell, a private investigator Diane had worked with on previous cases. Sarah arrived within an hour, a woman in her mid-50s with sharp eyes and a leather portfolio that had seen better days. Show me everything, Sarah said. We spent 90 minutes walking through the evidence. Every photo, every email address, every deposit and withdrawal. Sarah took notes in a shorthand I couldn't read, occasionally asking questions that revealed decades of experience. This will take about a week, she said, as she copied the USB contents. Maybe less if I get lucky. I'll run background checks on all 3 names cross-referenced with law enforcement databases. Check civil court records in Ohio, Tennessee, and Georgia. She looked at me directly. Mr. Blackwell, if this woman is who I think she is, you're not her first victim. I drove home as the sun set over Charlotte Russell's porch light, already on like a beacon. The week that followed was the longest of my life. I kept my routine, morning coffee, afternoon walk, evening news. But every moment felt suspended waiting for Sarah's call. Liam texted twice asking if there was any news. I told him to sit tight, keep acting normal around Lauren. The hardest part was knowing what I knew and having to wait for confirmation. Diane called on day 13. Sarah has preliminary results. Can you come in this afternoon? Sarah's folder was 6 inches thick. She opened it methodically, laying out documents like a prosecutor building a case. Driver's licenses, marriage certificates, police reports, bank statements. Each page another piece of a pattern I'd been too close to see. Lauren Blackwell doesn't exist before 2020, Sarah began. No birth certificate, no driver's license history, no credit report. She appears fully formed the year she married your son. She slid 3 driver's license photos across the desk. Same woman, 3 different names. Vanessa Moore, married in Cleveland 2017. Divorced 2018. Her ex-husband filed a civil suit, claiming she emptied their joint account $68,000 2 weeks before serving him papers. Case was settled out of court. Next photo. Jessica Palmer. This is where it gets serious. Sarah tapped an official document. Active arrest warrant out of Ohio, issued February 2019. She's wanted for theft from Theodore and Ellen Kowalski, ages 73 and 69. $420,000 drained from their retirement accounts over 6 months. The Kowalskis lost their home. I felt my insurance adjuster brain kick in calculating. That's at least $488,000 across 2 confirmed victims. It's 5 victims, Sarah corrected. I found 3 more, a widower in Tennessee 2020, a couple in Georgia 2022, another elderly man in Charlotte 2015. That one was before she refined her method. Dementia patient. She got him to change his will before his family caught on. She pulled out a map with colored pins. She moves every 18 to 24 months, changes her name, changes her story, always targets men over 65, recently widowed or divorced, always uses romance and trust as the entry point. And Kenneth Wallace, I asked. Sarah's expression darkened. Kenneth Wallace is Marcus Reeves, age 54, originally from Atlanta. He served 3 years in Georgia for real estate fraud. He's been investigated twice by the Georgia Attorney General's office for elder financial exploitation, both cases dropped due to lack of evidence. She pulled out surveillance photos. Kenneth Marcus meeting with Lauren at a Starbucks in Tennessee, 2020. They've worked together before. He provides the legal framework, the estate planning cover story. She provides the access to the victims. Diane leaned forward. This is a multi-state operation, Marshal. 5 confirmed victims, possibly more. Total damages likely exceed $2 million. This is federal jurisdiction now. We need to contact the FBI, Sarah added. They have a task force for exactly this kind of fraud. I sat back, my mind reeling. I'd known Lauren was lying. I'd known Kenneth was involved. But this was beyond anything I'd imagined. Liam doesn't know, I said quietly. He's a victim too. I know, Diane said, and that's going to work in his favor. But we need to move fast. If Lauren suspects we're investigating, she'll disappear. She's done it before. What do we do? I asked. Tomorrow morning, we contact the FBI Charlotte field office, Diane said. I have a contact there, Lisa Moreno, White Collar Crimes Division. With this evidence, they'll open an investigation immediately. She closed the folder. In the meantime, you do nothing, act normal, don't confront her, don't tell Liam yet. We can't risk spooking her before the FBI is involved. I nodded, but my hands were shaking. 40 years investigating insurance fraud had taught me to spot patterns, to trust evidence over emotion. But this wasn't a claim file. This was my son's life, my family. As I stood to leave, Sarah handed me a final document. One more thing, she said. Marcus Reeves. His real name is Kenneth Marcus Wallace. He's been using variations of his own name this whole time. Diane met my eyes. They're confident. They think they're untouchable. I drove home as darkness fell over Charlotte Russell's kitchen light, visible through the trees. I thought about the 5 victims before me, the families destroyed, the trust betrayed. Lauren or Vanessa or Jessica or whoever she really was had done this before. She would do it again, unless we stopped her. Diane's call came on day 17, 4 days after our meeting with Sarah Mitchell. The FBI wants to meet with you, she said carefully. Tomorrow afternoon. I'll go with you. I'd known this was coming, but hearing those words made my hands shake. The FBI. This was real. What time? I asked. 2 o'clock, their Charlotte field office. The FBI building on Microsoft Way looked ordinary, modern glass and steel like any tech company, but the security was different. Metal detectors, ID verification, visitor badges that tracked our every movement. Agent Lisa Moreno met us on the 3rd floor. Mid-40s gray suit, sharp eyes that had seen too many lies. She led us to a conference room where a digital evidence board covered one wall. Our USB files, blown up, organized, connected with red lines to photos I'd never seen. Mr. Blackwell, Miss Foster. Agent Moreno gestured to chairs. Thank you for coming. What you've uncovered is part of something we've been investigating for 18 months. 18 months. While I'd been mourning Catherine, they'd been building a case. Operation Golden Years, she continued, a criminal network targeting elderly Americans across the Southeast. We've identified 6 confirmed victims in 4 states. Total damages exceed $3.2 million. She clicked a remote. The screen shifted to surveillance photos, Lauren, but not Lauren, with different men. Different cities, different years. The woman your son married is part of a 5-member organized crime ring. She's operated under multiple identities since 2015. Vanessa Moore in Ohio, Jessica Palmer in Cincinnati, Lauren Blackwell here in Charlotte. Agent Moreno pulled up financial records. The pattern is consistent. She targets recently widowed or divorced men over 60 with assets exceeding $1 million. She establishes relationships through their adult children, usually sons. Marriage follows within 18 to 24 months. Another click. Kenneth Wallace appeared on screen. Her partner is Marcus Reeves, age 54. Criminal record includes fraud, forgery, conspiracy. He provides the legal infrastructure estate planning powers of attorney trust modifications. While she gains emotional access, he handles the financial extraction. The screen showed a network diagram. 6 families, 6 names I didn't recognize. All lines connecting them all to the same 2 faces. Ohio 2017, Robert and Helen Wagner, $210,000 stolen. Agent Moreno's voice was clinical, but anger lurked underneath. Ohio 2019, Theodore Kowalski, $420,000. His wife died 3 months after he lost everything. My chest tightened. Tennessee 2020, Dennis Patterson, $380,000, Georgia 2022. The Hendersons, $570,000. Florida 2023, James Martinez, $650,000. Each number was a life destroyed, a family torn apart. The 6th victim was here in Charlotte 2024, Arthur Wilson, $490,000. He died of a heart attack 2 weeks after discovering the fraud. She paused. You're the 7th target, Mr. Blackwell, and you're the first one who caught them before they could finish. How? I asked. How did you connect all this? A detective in Tennessee noticed similarities across elderly fraud cases. He contacted us. We started pulling threads, database matching financial patterns, surveillance footage from banks. She gestured to our USB. But we've never had evidence like this? Security footage? Digital files? A laptop with her real communications? You've given us more in 2 weeks than we've gathered in 18 months. What's her real name? I asked. Agent Moreno exchanged glances with another agent. We know her identity, but we can't share that information yet. It's part of our operational security. When the time comes, you'll know exactly what to say. She opened a small case on the table. Inside was a device the size of a quarter. We need you to wear a wire. Call them. Tell them you've changed your mind, that you're ready to sign whatever they want. Get them in your house, get them talking. They'll suspect something, I said. Possibly, but they're invested. 4 years with your son, $625,000 in home equity alone. Over $1 million in total assets. They're close to a big payoff. They'll take the risk. I looked at Diane. She nodded once. Your son, Agent Moreno added. We've verified his story completely. The laptop discovery, the timeline, everything. He's a victim too. No charges will be filed against him. Relief washed through me. Liam was innocent. The FBI confirmed it. We need 2 days to prepare, Agent Moreno said. Surveillance team's tactical positioning backup units. You'll make the call on day 19, evening meeting at your house. We'll be 2 blocks away, listening to everything. She slid a thin folder across the table. Study this. It's your script questions to ask topics to bring up phrases that will get them talking. Practice until it feels natural. I opened the folder. Pages of dialogue, scenarios, contingencies. One more thing, Mr. Blackwell. Agent Moreno's expression softened slightly. When this goes down, your son will be there. He'll see everything. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Liam at 3 a.m., disheveled and crying. Liam discovering Lauren's laptop. Liam realizing the woman he loved was a lie. He deserves to see the truth, I said. Good. Agent Moreno stood. 48 hours. Then we end this. I left the FBI building at 4:30 with a wired device in my pocket and a script in my hand. Diane walked me to my car. You don't have to do this, she said. Yes, I do. I looked at the folder. 6 families didn't get justice. 6 families lost everything while these people moved on to the next victim. I'm doing this for them. I drove home as the sun set over Charlotte. In 48 hours, I'd faced the woman who'd tried to destroy my family. The woman who'd manipulated my son for 4 years. I didn't know her real name yet, but I would, before I tell you what happened the night they walked back into my house. Comment standing. If you're still with Marshall, let me know you haven't looked away. And just a brief reminder, the next chapter contains creative storytelling choices crafted to heighten tension and highlight important lessons. If this isn't the kind of content you prefer, you're welcome to step away here. 2 days felt like 2 years. I practiced the script until the words felt natural, memorized the questions Agent Moreno had written, tested the wire device hidden under my shirt so small I could barely feel it, but knowing the FB I was listening made it weigh like lead. Day 19 arrived with clear skies and cold wind. At 3 in the afternoon, I made the call. Lauren answered on the second ring. Marshall. Her voice was cautious. I've been thinking, I said, following the script, about what you and Kenneth said, about planning for the future. I paused, let her hear the resignation in my voice. I'm ready to sign whatever documents you need. Silence, then, That's wonderful, Marshall. I'm so glad you've come around. Too eager, too quick. Agent Moreno had been right, they couldn't resist. Can you come by tonight? I asked. 7 o'clock. Bring the paperwork. Of course. Kenneth will want to be there too to make sure everything's proper. Fine. I kept my voice tired, defeated. Liam should come. This affects his future too. Ooh, we'll all be there, Lauren said. Her voice was warm now, confident. You're making the right choice, Marshall. I hung up and stared at my hands. They weren't shaking anymore. At 6:30, Agent Moreno's voice came through my earpiece, a tiny receiver they'd given me that morning. FBI surveillance van in position 2 blocks south. Tactical team staged at the neighbor's house. Russell Parker has been briefed and evacuated. We're ready when you are, Mr. Blackwell. I looked around my living room. The same room where Catherine and I had celebrated 30 anniversaries, where Liam had opened Christmas presents as a boy, where I'd confronted Kenneth Wallace 2 weeks ago. Tonight, it would become a crime scene. I'm ready, I said quietly. At 7 o'clock exactly, headlights swept across my front window. I watched through the curtains as Liam's car pulled into the driveway. 3 people got out. Liam looked nervous. Lauren looked confident. Kenneth Marcus looked like a man about to collect a paycheck. The doorbell rang. I opened it, playing the tired old man they expected to see. Come in. Liam hugged me, whispered, Are you sure about this, Dad? I'm sure, I said, and I was. They settled into the living room. Kenneth spread documents across the coffee table, power of attorney forms, trust amendments, beneficiary changes. Everything designed to transfer my assets into their control. This is straightforward, Kenneth said in his smooth estate planner voice. We're just protecting your interests, making sure Liam's taken care of if anything happens. Lauren sat close to Liam, her hand on his knee, playing the devoted daughter-in-law. I wondered how many times she'd sat like this with other families, other victims. Before I sign anything, I said slowly, I want to understand something, Lauren. She smiled. Of course, Marshall. What would you like to know? Tell me about your family, your real family, back in Tennessee. Her smile didn't waver. I've told you about them. My parents passed away when I was young. I don't have much family left. That's odd, I said, because when you talk about Knoxville, you don't have the accent. And when I mentioned Calhoun's restaurant, you didn't know what I was talking about. A flicker of something crossed her face. I've been away a long time. You lose the accent. Liam looked confused. Lauren, what's he talking about? I pulled out my phone, opened the photos Jake had recovered from her laptop. Liam found these pictures on your old computer. You with different families, different names. Kenneth stood abruptly. This is inappropriate. We came here in good faith. Sit down, Marcus, I said. He froze. What did you call me? Marcus Reeves. That's your real name, isn't it? Not Kenneth Wallace. I looked at Lauren. And you. How many names have you used? Vanessa Moore in Ohio, Jessica Palmer in Cincinnati. Lauren's mask was cracking. Liam pulled away from her, staring. Dad, what's going on? Tell him, I said to Lauren. Tell him the truth. Tell him about the 6 families before us. Tell him about the $2 million you've stolen. You're being paranoid, Lauren said, but her voice had changed, harder, colder. Liam, your father is confused. I know who you are, I said quietly, And then I spoke the name Agent Moreno had finally revealed to me this morning. Serena. The room went dead silent. Lauren Serena stared at me, all pretense gone. Who told you that name? Serena Voss. I continued. 37 years old, 10 known identities, 15 possible victims. You've been running this con since you were 23. Liam stood up, backing away from her. Lauren, tell him he's wrong. Please tell him he's wrong. Serena looked at Liam, and for a moment something almost human crossed her face. Then it vanished. She bolted for the front door. She made it 3 steps before the door burst open. FBI, hands up. Agent Moreno and 4 other agents flooded into my living room. Weapons drawn. Serena froze, hands raised, her face twisted with rage and calculation. Marcus ran for the back door. He didn't make it far. 2 agents tackled him in my kitchen. I heard him hit the floor hard, heard the metallic click of handcuffs. Serena Voss, you're under arrest. Agent Moreno said, her voice calm and professional. Fraud, conspiracy, theft, crossing state lines to commit felony crimes. As they cuffed her, Serena looked back at me. Not angry, not scared, just cold, empty. Like she was already planning her next move, her next victim, her next name. Liam stood in the middle of my living room, watching the woman he loved being led away in handcuffs. Then he turned to me. Dad, his voice broke. Did you know, this whole time, did you know, I wanted to tell him about the investigation, about the FBI, about the 6 families who'd lost everything. But all I could see was my son's face, the trust draining out of it, replaced by betrayal. Liam, did you know, he asked again, and his voice cracked like he was 12 years old, and I'd just told him his mother was dying. I opened my mouth, but Agent Moreno spoke first. Your father saved your life, son, and probably 6 more families after you. Liam looked at me, then at Serena being pushed into an FBI vehicle outside, then back at me. I need... He couldn't finish. He walked out the door and didn't look back. I stood in my living room surrounded by FBI agents documenting the scene and listened to my son's car pull away. We'd caught them. We'd stopped them. But watching Liam leave, I wasn't sure we'd won anything at all. The police lights painted my living room in alternating red and blue. Through the window, I watched FBI agents loading evidence boxes into vans. Neighbors stood on their porches trying to understand what had just happened. Liam sat on the couch where Serena had sat an hour ago. He hadn't moved since Agent Moreno asked him to stay. I wanted to sit beside him, put my arm around him like I had when he was 12 and Catherine first got sick. But I didn't know if he'd let me. Agent Moreno came back inside, her professional mask softened slightly. Liam, I need to ask you some questions. For the record, you're not under investigation. You're a witness and a victim, but we need your statement. Liam nodded without looking up. Okay. She sat across from him, tablet in hand. When did you first meet the woman you knew as Lauren Blackwell? 4 years ago. Liam's voice was flat hollow. October 2020, church charity event, St. Mark's downtown. She was volunteering at the food drive. I'd forgotten about that. Liam had started going to St. Mark's after Catherine died, looking for community, looking for something to fill the emptiness. Serena had been looking too, for her next victim. She seemed perfect, Liam continued. Kind, funny. She asked about my family, seemed genuinely interested in my life. We started getting coffee after volunteer shifts, then dinners. It felt natural. It felt real. Agent Moreno typed notes. When did she meet your father? 6 months later, April 2021. I'd been wanting them to meet, but she kept saying she was nervous, wanted to wait until the time was right. Liam laughed bitterly. Now I know she was just planning, calculating when to make her move. What about Kenneth Wallace Marcus Reeves? Agent Moreno asked. Lauren introduced us about a year ago, said he was a friend's father, an estate planning expert. After Dad's health scare last year, Liam glanced at me. I'd had a false alarm with chest pains. Nothing serious, but it had scared us both. Lauren suggested Dad needed to plan for the future. Kenneth seemed legitimate, professional. They usually do, Agent Moreno said quietly. Liam, I need you to understand something. Serena Voss is a professional. She's been doing this for over a decade. Everything about your relationship was engineered. The charity event wasn't coincidence, they researched their targets. Your father was recently widowed, financially stable in his mid-60s. You were his only child, working as a teacher, good-hearted. You were the perfect access point. Liam's hands started shaking. 4 years. 4 years of my life. I was going to... We talked about having kids, about buying a house together. His voice broke. Was any of it real? No, Agent Moreno said, and I was grateful for her honesty. I'm sorry, Liam, but no. Serena Voss doesn't form real relationships. She forms strategic ones. Liam stood abruptly, walked to the window. I could see his reflection in the glass, my son trying not to fall apart. Liam, Agent Moreno continued gently. We've reviewed her phone and computer. The texts she sent you, the emails, the photos, they were all part of a script. We found similar message templates on her laptop. Same phrases sent to previous victims' family members. Same spontaneous date ideas. Same timeline. Stop. Liam's voice was barely a whisper. Please stop. Agent Moreno closed her tablet. You're a victim in this case, Liam, not an accomplice. You'll need to testify when this goes to trial, but you're not facing any charges. I want to be very clear about that. Liam turned around. I helped them. I gave her access to Dad. I encouraged him to meet with Kenneth. I signed papers. That you believed were legitimate, Agent Moreno interrupted. You had no knowledge of their criminal intent. You were manipulated by professionals who've done this successfully 6 times before. The difference is, your father caught them. You helped him catch them, whether you realized it or not. After Agent Moreno left with her team after the last FB, Ivan pulled away and the neighbors finally went inside. It was just Liam and me in the quiet house. He stood by the fireplace staring at a photo from his college graduation. Catherine and I flanking him, all 3 of us smiling at a future that had seemed so certain. I almost cost us everything, he said finally. The house, your savings, everything Mom worked for. You didn't know, I said. I should have known. There were signs. Small things that didn't add up, but I ignored them because I wanted it to be real. I wanted to believe someone could love me like that. He looked at me, tears streaming down his face. How do I trust anyone again? How do I trust myself? I crossed the room, pulled him into a hug like I hadn't done since he was a boy. He collapsed against me, and I felt him sob deep, wrenching sounds that broke my heart more than anything Serena Voss had done. One step at a time, I whispered. We'll figure it out together. We stood there a long time, my son grieving a relationship that had never existed, me holding him, grateful he was alive and free and still mine. Finally, Liam pulled back, wiped his face. I don't want to go home tonight, to the apartment, everything there. She picked out the furniture, the dishes, the damn curtains. Stay here, I said immediately. Your room's the same. He looked surprised. You kept it? Of course I kept it. I always hoped you'd come back someday. I managed a small smile, though I imagined better circumstances. Liam almost laughed. Almost. Can I just sleep here tonight? I don't want to think anymore. Stay as long as you need. I watched him climb the stairs to his old room, the room with his high school baseball trophies and the glow-in-the-dark stars Catherine had helped him stick to the ceiling when he was 8. Downstairs, I sat in my living room, alone with the silence. We'd stopped Serena Voss. We'd caught the criminals. We'd saved $625,000 and probably saved future victims. But looking at the empty space where my son had sat broken and betrayed, I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd lost something too. Something that might take longer than one night to rebuild. 6 weeks had crawled by since the night of Serena's arrest, and now Liam and I stood side by side approaching the federal courthouse. The structure loomed before us, a monument of marble columns and stern architecture that seemed designed to intimidate. Security checkpoints created bottlenecks at every entrance. The street had transformed into a media circus satellite vans, parked bumper to bumper along the curb, their antennae reaching toward the sky like metal fingers. Agent Moreno had prepared us for this attention. Operation Golden Years had exploded across national headlines. Every news outlet wanted their piece of the story. Elderly fraud ring dismantled, one banner screamed. Romance con artist awaits federal trial, declared another. Liam had chosen the Navy suit Catherine had purchased for him 5 years back, when he'd been interviewing for teaching positions fresh out of graduate school. The fabric hung differently on him now, looser around the shoulders, the waist requiring an extra notch on his belt. The stress had carved weight from his frame during these past weeks, hollowing out his cheeks and sharpening his jawline in ways that aged him beyond his years. You ready for this? I asked as we closed in on the metal detectors, watching other people funnel through the security apparatus. He gave a single determined nod. "Let's finish what we started." The courtroom itself surprised me with its modest dimensions. I'd imagined something grander, more theatrical. Instead, we entered a space that felt almost intimate despite its formal trappings. Serena occupied the defense table in her orange prison jumpsuit, hair scraped back from her face in a severe ponytail skin, bare of any cosmetic enhancement. She appeared unremarkable, common. That realization sent ice through my veins, the ordinariness of her. She could have been anyone's daughter, anyone's wife, anyone's neighbor. Evil didn't always announce itself with fanfare. Marcus Reeves had already made his exit from this drama. 3 weeks prior, he'd accepted a plea bargain, trading his testimony against Serena for a shortened sentence. 7 years behind bars rather than 15. Agent Moreno had explained that his cooperation had proven invaluable names of other potential accomplices. Detailed methodology of their operations. Offshore bank accounts that investigators hadn't discovered. He'd chosen survival over loyalty, and I couldn't entirely blame him for that calculation. The prosecution summoned me as their opening witness. I approached the stand with the same deliberate composure I'd cultivated over 4 decades of professional testimony. Raised my right hand toward the ceiling. Swore before God and this court to speak nothing but truth. The prosecutor, Jennifer Walsh, possessed the sharp competence of someone who'd built her career on cases exactly like this one. She guided me through our story with surgical precision. The security camera footage showing that hooded figure, the mysteriously deleted files, Liam's accidental discovery of the damning laptop, the USB drive containing years of deception. Mr. Blackwell, during your 4 decades working as an insurance adjuster, approximately how many fraud investigations did you conduct? Several hundred at minimum, I responded, keeping my tone professional and measured. Possibly exceeding 1,000 when I account for smaller claims that never reached full investigation status. Drawing upon that extensive professional experience, would you characterize this particular fraud scheme as sophisticated, extraordinarily sophisticated? The documentation they had prepared was absolutely flawless, expertly forged, legally sound on its surface. The estate planning framework appeared completely legitimate. If I hadn't physically caught them in the process of executing their plan, they would have succeeded completely. I'd have lost everything without ever understanding what happened. Why not maintain that clinical detachment, treating this testimony like any other professional obligation I'd fulfilled throughout my career? But when Jennifer Walsh displayed photographs for the jury images of the 6 previous victims, elderly faces creased with years of living, some now permanently absent from this world, my composure fractured momentarily. These individuals placed their trust in her, I said, my voice roughening, despite my best efforts. They believed in her authenticity exactly the way my son did. As Serena's defense attorney launched his cross-examination with predictable aggression, suggesting I'd misinterpreted benign actions through a lens of paranoia and suspicion, that perhaps my judgment had been clouded by grief over Catherine's death, by loneliness, by the natural cognitive decline that accompanies advanced age. I simply held his gaze across the courtroom. I possess 4 decades of professional expertise in fraud identification, I stated flatly. This wasn't misunderstanding or confusion. This was calculated, deliberate fraud. Then came Liam's turn. Watching my son traverse that courtroom aisle, observing him raise his hand to take that solemn oath, I experienced simultaneous surges of pride and heartbreak, so intense they physically hurt. Pride that he'd found the courage to face this public humiliation. Heartbreak that he needed to endure it at all. Jennifer Walsh handled him with notable gentleness, recognizing his victim status. Liam, at what point did you first develop suspicions that something wasn't right in your relationship? Not until everything was nearly finished, Liam admitted, his voice barely rising above a whisper. The laptop discovery was completely accidental. Even after seeing those files, those photographs, part of me desperately wanted to find some rational explanation. I loved her with everything I had. I genuinely believed she reciprocated those feelings. Did the defendant ever provide any indication, however subtle, that your relationship was anything other than genuine? Never, not once. Liam's hands clenched in his lap. She was absolutely perfect. Every birthday celebration, every anniversary, every seemingly spontaneous moment, it all felt completely authentic. That's what made her deception so effective. I never suspected anything because she gave me nothing to suspect. Her performance was flawless. The defense attorney attempted to imply Liam's complicity, suggesting he'd been aware of the fraud scheme and had participated knowingly. Liam finally lifted his eyes to look directly at Serena, sitting motionless at the defense table. "I would have sacrificed my life for her without hesitation," he said, his voice strengthening. "I'd been planning to propose next month. I'd already purchased an engagement ring. I was preparing to ask my father for his blessing and permission." His voice fractured then. "And during all that time, while I was planning our future together, she was systematically planning to rob my father of everything he and my mother had built together." Serena's expression never changed. She sat there like a statue, revealing nothing, feeling nothing visible. 2 additional victims provided testimony through video conference technology. A widow from Ohio, whose husband had died just 3 months after discovering his life savings, had vanished. A man from Georgia who'd lost his deceased wife's entire life insurance settlement, money meant to sustain him through his remaining years. Their stories echoed each other with disturbing consistency. The seemingly perfect relationship that emerged from nowhere. The trusted advisor who appeared at precisely the right moment. The gradual, almost imperceptible transfer of financial control. The devastating moment of discovery when reality finally revealed itself. The prosecution constructed a comprehensive financial timeline demonstrating the pattern. Serena and Marcus had executed their operation across 6 different states, spanning 9 years of activity. 7 confirmed victims. Over $3 million stolen from people who'd worked their entire lives to accumulate that security. "This wasn't an act of desperation," Jennifer Walsh told the jury during her closing argument, her voice ringing with controlled fury. "This wasn't survival. This was professional, cold-blooded predation, executed by someone who deliberately targeted grieving, vulnerable people and systematically destroyed their lives. And she did it purely for financial gain." The defense team attempted to reframe Serena's narrative, painting her as a damaged woman emerging from a troubled background, someone who'd made regrettable choices but deserved understanding and compassion rather than condemnation. The jury withdrew to deliberate. 4 hours passed. When they finally returned, Serena rose to hear their verdict, her face revealing absolutely nothing as the forewoman addressed the court. "On count 1, wire fraud, we find the defendant guilty. On count 2, conspiracy to commit fraud, we find the defendant guilty. On count 3, identity theft, we find the defendant guilty." Guilty verdicts on all 17 separate counts. The formal sentencing hearing occurred 1 week later. Liam and I returned to that same courthouse, occupied those same seats in the gallery, and watched Serena stand before the judge to receive her fate. "Ms. Voss," the judge began, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "You have demonstrated no remorse whatsoever for your actions throughout these proceedings. You have systematically destroyed families' stolen life savings that people accumulated through decades of hard work. And your actions directly contributed to the deaths of at least 2 victims, whose hearts couldn't withstand the shock of your betrayal. You represent a clear and present danger to society. 15 years in federal prison, no possibility of parole consideration for at least 12 years. As the federal marshals moved forward to escort Serena from the courtroom, she turned her head and locked eyes with Liam one final time. Her expression conveyed no anger, no sadness, no regret. Just emptiness, a void where human connection should have existed, as though Liam and all her other victims had never meant anything at all, as though they'd been nothing more than transactions in a ledger. This time, Liam didn't flinch away. He held her gaze steadily until she vanished through the door that would separate her from freedom for the next decade and beyond. Outside the courthouse, the media descended like a swarm of locusts, microphones thrust toward our faces, camera lenses focusing and refocusing. Questions shouted from every direction, voices overlapping into incomprehensible noise. I paused at the top of the courthouse steps, Liam standing solid beside me. "My son and I remain standing together," I said clearly, loudly enough for the recording devices to capture. "That's everything we have to say today." Liam's hand found mine as we descended those steps together, his fingers squeezed once firm and certain. We drove back home through afternoon traffic, neither of us speaking. But this silence felt different from the silence that had filled the car 6 weeks ago. Not shattered, not broken, just quiet, peaceful. The silence of people who'd survived something terrible together and emerged on the other side. Justice had finally been served. The predator had been caged. 1 year had elapsed since the night of Serena's arrest, and I found myself seated at Catherine's old writing desk with her leather-bound journal spread open before me. She'd maintained this journal faithfully for 3 decades, a repository of handwritten recipes passed down through generations. Detailed notes about which plants thrived in which corners of our garden, reflections about watching Liam grow from infant to man. After her death, I'd kept the journal sealed in her desk drawer, unable to summon the emotional strength to open it. Now I was adding my own chapter to hers, my handwriting looking angular and masculine beside her flowing script. Dear Catherine, a full year has passed since I discovered the truth about our son's wife. A full year since I chose to fight back rather than become another statistic. You would have felt such pride watching how Liam handled everything that followed, how we've been healing side by side. I'm writing this for people who might be confronting what I confronted. Because I've learned something profound, age doesn't render us helpless. It makes us dangerous if we make the conscious choice to be. I lifted my eyes from the page and gazed through the window at Russell, tending his roses the morning sun, catching the water droplets from his hose, and transforming them into tiny prisms. I thought about everything that had transported me to this moment of reflection. Then I returned to writing. To anyone reading these words who's facing circumstances similar to mine, age is not synonymous with weakness. Every year you've survived on this earth has imparted lessons. You've developed the ability to read people accurately. You recognize when something feels wrong in your gut. Trust that accumulated knowledge. Watch for these warning signs. Someone attempts to isolate you from family members or longtime friends. They pressure you to make financial decisions with artificial urgency. They discourage you from seeking second opinions or consulting other advisors. They respond with anger or defensiveness when you ask reasonable questions. Trust people, but always verify their claims. Even with family members, especially with family members. Love and trust are not identical concepts. If someone claiming to love you becomes angry when you ask for clarification or documentation, that reaction is communicating something important. Community becomes your fortress. I survived this ordeal because of Russell Parker, Jake Martinez, Diane Foster, Agent Moreno, people who noticed when details didn't align properly and spoke up, despite potential awkwardness. Build your fortress intentionally. Maintain connections. Predators depend on isolation to succeed. Refuse to be alone. Technology serves as your ally. A $150 security camera system saved me $625,000 in assets. Install cameras around your property. Maintain digital records of all important communications and transactions. Back up everything to cloud storage. Document everything meticulously. The legal system functions properly if you take action. I gathered comprehensive evidence. I hired competent legal representation. I contacted federal law enforcement. I fought back strategically. Don't wait for someone else to rescue you. Understand your legal rights. You possess the authority to revoke power of attorney at any time. You can refuse financial advice you don't understand. You can demand to review all documents thoroughly before signing anything. You can bring a trusted person to any meeting. You can modify beneficiaries or estate plans if you're mentally competent. Document absolutely everything. Keep a daily journal. Save every email. Screenshot text messages. Record conversations where legally permissible. Create a comprehensive paper trail. That evidence became my salvation. Ask for help without shame. Call Adult Protective Services in your county. Contact your local area agency on aging. Reach out to elder law attorneys in your area. Most offer free initial consultations. You don't have to wage this battle alone. If you're thinking thoughts like, I'm too old to understand modern technology, or I'm too old to fight back effectively, stop that thinking immediately. I'm 67 years old. I learned security camera systems, digital evidence preservation, legal systems I'd never encountered before. If I can accomplish it, you can too. Your age is your weapon. Deploy it strategically. 1 year after Serena's arrest, here's what my life looks like. Liam has been dating Sarah for 4 months. Now she teaches 4th grade at an elementary school across town. They met at a support group Liam volunteers with for adult children affected by parental fraud. He's transforming his pain into purpose, helping others navigate similar trauma. He brought Sarah to meet me 2 months ago after telling her absolutely everything on their first date. Complete honesty. No secrets, no hidden history. She stayed anyway. She asked thoughtful questions, expressed appropriate outrage, and squeezed Liam's hand when his voice broke telling certain parts. That's how I knew she might be genuine. I took my first trip since Catherine's death, Asheville, North Carolina. 3 days with Russell exploring the mountains. We hiked trails appropriate for men. our age consumed excessive amounts of authentic barbecue. Proved to ourselves we could still embrace adventure and forward movement. I speak at senior centers now on a regular basis, protecting yourself from financial fraud and exploitation. Or started with one talk to 15 people now, I deliver 2 presentations monthly to packed rooms. I've directly helped 3 people avoid scams that were already in motion. Dorothy from my support group referred her neighbor to me. Someone was pressuring the neighbor to sign over her house to pay fabricated tax debts. We stopped it completely. Agent Moreno informed me that Serena's arrest triggered 4 additional arrests within the broader criminal network. 11 confirmed victims total across 7 states. Over $4 million in attempted fraud prevented. Liam and I accomplished that together, with help from good people who chose to care. Thanksgiving arrived 2 weeks ago, the kind of Thanksgiving Catherine would have loved. My dining room table, originally designed for 6 people, maximum somehow accommodated 10. Liam and Sarah arrived early to help with cooking preparations. Russell brought his famous pecan pie. Jordan came with his girlfriend who'd just finished nursing school. Diane arrived with excellent wine and stories from her latest case. Jake brought his wife and 2 kids who patiently taught me how to use TikTok and explained the memes I didn't understand. We laughed too loud, ate too much, argued passionately about football. Sarah fit naturally into our dynamic, helping Liam carve the turkey and teasing me about my outdated coffee maker. This wasn't the family Catherine and I had planned or imagined, but they were mine, chosen through adversity and earned through trust. Before dinner, I raised my wine glass for a toast. To Catherine, who taught me what authentic love looks like. Liam lifted his glass. To second chances we don't waste. Russell. To people who give a damn when it matters. Jake. To security cameras. Everyone laughed at that. Diane. To justice that actually works sometimes. Sarah, still learning our rhythms. To healing that happens together. To all of it, I finished. To family we choose intentionally. To fighting back when cornered. To still being here and standing. Later, while cleaning up the considerable mess, Liam stood beside me at the sink, washing dishes. You ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't caught them in time? Every single day, I admitted honestly. But I did catch them. That's what ultimately matters. Because you fought back instead of accepting it. Because we fought back, I corrected him firmly. Together. You found that laptop. You came to me at 3 a.m. You testified in court. This victory belongs to both of us. He smiled the genuine smile I'd been seeing more frequently. Mom would have been proud of us. She is proud, I said with certainty. Here's what I need you to understand. Serena Voss and Marcus Reeves evaluated me and concluded I was an easy target. 67 years old, recently widowed, grieving, living alone. They were catastrophically wrong. I wasn't alone. I had Russell. I had community. I had 40 years of professional experience that taught me to question everything, to investigate thoroughly, to trust my instincts over convenient explanations. I wasn't helpless. I had resources. I had legal rights. I had technology. I wasn't too old. I was exactly the right age, old enough to possess wisdom, young enough to fight effectively. They underestimated me completely. That was their fatal mistake. If you recognize yourself in this story, you are not alone. Resources exist. Support groups, legal aid, people who will help you fight without judgment. You are not helpless. You possess rights. You have legal protections. You have the power to say no, to ask questions, to walk away. You are not too old to fight back. Every year you've lived has made you stronger. You've survived lost change challenges. You can survive this too. Your voice carries weight. When you speak up, you protect not just yourself, but the next person they would have targeted. Your instincts hold validity. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't let anyone convince you you're being paranoid. Trust yourself. I closed Catherine's journal and stood at the window watching spring transform Charlotte. The dogwoods had given way to summer's deeper greens, life continuing its cycle. Liam was bringing Sarah for dinner tonight. Russell would probably drop by for coffee tomorrow morning. Next week I'd speak at another senior center. The week after my support group would meet. Life moved forward. We moved with it. Not forgetting what happened, not pretending it didn't leave scars, but not letting it define us either. Catherine used to say that strength isn't about never falling down, it's about getting back up every single time. We got back up, and we're still standing. 12 months had passed since that pivotal night when federal agents stormed through my front door and placed handcuffs on the woman my son had planned to marry. Now I found myself standing in front of a room filled with 78 senior citizens at the Meadowbrook Community Center, preparing to deliver my monthly presentation on elder fraud prevention. The room smelled like coffee and vanilla air freshener, folding chairs arranged in neat rows. A projector displaying my opening slide, "Your age is your armor, fighting back against financial predators." Some attendees sat with arms crossed, skeptical expressions, suggesting they'd come because their adult children had insisted. Others leaned forward with notebooks open, already taking notes before I'd spoken a single word. "My name is Marshall Blackwell," I began, my voice carrying to the back row. "1 year ago, my own family tried to steal everything I owned, and I'm going to tell you exactly how I stopped them." The skeptical expressions shifted. People sat up straighter. I'd delivered this presentation 19 times now, but it never got easier, sharing the most humiliating details of my life with strangers. Admitting I'd been targeted, manipulated, nearly destroyed. But every time I finished, at least one person would approach me afterward with trembling hands and whispered confessions. "This is happening to me right now." And that made every uncomfortable moment worthwhile. Today, a woman in the third row, maybe 75 pearl necklace hands twisting a tissue, caught my attention. She had that look. The one I'd learned to recognize. Fear mixed with shame, mixed with desperate hope that someone might understand. After my presentation concluded, after the applause faded, and people gathered their belongings, she approached me with hesitant steps. "Mr. Blackwell, I'm Margaret Chen." Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "My nephew has been living with me for 8 months. He convinced me to add him to my checking account. Yesterday I discovered $40,000 missing." My chest tightened with familiar anger. Another predator, another victim. "Have you confronted him?" I asked gently. "He says I'm confused, that I gave him permission to use the money for house repairs that haven't happened yet. He says I'm getting forgetful." Tears spilled down her cheeks. Maybe I am. Maybe I did give permission and just don't remember. I'd heard this script before. The gaslighting, the manipulation, making victims doubt their own reality. "Mrs. Chen, do you have bank statements?" She nodded, pulling folded papers from her purse with shaking hands. We sat in the now empty community center for 90 minutes. I walked her through documenting everything, photographing the statements, writing down every conversation she could remember. I gave her Diane Foster's phone number, explained her rights, reminded her that confusion and dementia don't make someone less deserving of protection. They make legal protections more important. "But he's family," she whispered. "If I report him, it'll destroy my sister. She'll never forgive me. If you don't report him, he'll destroy you," I said. "And then he'll move on to someone else's family, someone else's sister." She left with Diane's number programmed into her phone and a promise to call within 24 hours. I watched her walk to her car, shoulders a little straighter than when she'd arrived. Russell was waiting on my front porch when I got home, 2 cups of coffee from our favorite diner cooling on the railing. "How'd it go?" he asked as I climbed the steps. "Good. Maybe saved someone today. Maybe..." Russell handed me a coffee. "Frank, you've definitely saved people. That's not maybe territory anymore." We sat in comfortable silence, watching the neighborhood wind down for the evening. Kids riding bikes, someone mowing their lawn, normal life happening all around us. "Got a call from that reporter again," Russell mentioned casually. "The one from the Charlotte Observer. Still wants to do a feature story on you." I'd been avoiding that reporter for 3 months. Janet something. She'd tracked down my number, somehow left increasingly persistent voicemails about wanting to tell my story for a broader audience. "Not interested," I said. "Why not? You're already doing these talks, already putting yourself out there." "Talks are different. I control the narrative. I see the people I'm helping directly." I sipped the lukewarm coffee. "A newspaper article. That's permanent. That's my name attached to this forever. Your name is already attached to it. Court records are public. Serena's trial was national news. You're not protecting your privacy. That ship sailed." Russell looked at me with the bluntness of a 15-year friendship. "You're protecting your pride. There's a difference." He wasn't wrong. Part of me still felt ashamed. Still felt like a fool for not seeing Serena's deception sooner, for giving Liam power of attorney without better safeguards, for being vulnerable enough to become a target. "Think about it," Russell said, standing to leave. Meanwhile, Diane called. "She wants you to call her back. Said it's about Margaret Chen." My stomach dropped. Already? Margaret called her 2 hours ago. Diane's already filed emergency protective orders. The nephew's been served. bank accounts frozen. Russell smiled. You did that, Frank. You gave her the courage to act immediately instead of waiting until it was too late. After Russell left, I sat on that porch until the streetlights flickered on. Thought about Margaret Chen. About the 78 people who had attended today's presentation. About Mrs. Chen's nephew, who right now was probably furious that his scheme had been interrupted. About how many other nephews and granddaughters and trusted friends were executing similar schemes across Charlotte, across North Carolina, across the country. I pulled out my phone and found Janet the reporter's last voicemail, listened to her pitch again. Mr. Blackwell, I know you've been avoiding my calls. I understand the desire for privacy, but your story could help thousands of people who will never attend one of your local presentations. People who need to hear that fighting back is possible. That age doesn't equal helplessness. Please consider it. I hit the callback button before I could reconsider. She answered on the first ring. Mr. Blackwell. I'll do the interview, I said, on one condition. You interview Liam too. People need to understand that the old children in these situations are often victims themselves. 2 weeks later, the feature article appeared on the front page of the Charlotte Observer's Sunday edition. Local man exposes elder fraud ring, how one father's instincts saved his family. 4,000 words, photos of me at the community center, a sidebar with Liam's perspective, a comprehensive resource list for victims. My phone rang continuously for 3 days. Other newspapers requesting interviews, senior centers in neighboring counties asking me to speak, a television producer from a local news station wanting to do a segment, 2 elderly people calling to describe situations frighteningly similar to mine, and Agent Moreno calling to tell me that the article had generated 3 new leads in ongoing fraud investigations. You're doing more good than you realize, she said. These crimes thrive in darkness. You're shining a light. Liam read the article aloud to Sarah over breakfast in my kitchen that Sunday morning. We'd developed this new tradition in Sunday breakfast together, all 3 of us. Sarah made exceptional pancakes, and Liam had started bringing fresh fruit from the farmer's market. Liam Blackwell credits his father's 40 years of professional experience with saving both their lives. Liam read his voice catching slightly. But Marshall Blackwell insists the credit belongs to his son, whose accidental discovery of evidence and courage to come forward made the FBI investigation possible. Sarah squeezed Liam's hand across the table. She'd become a steady presence in our lives, gentle, thoughtful, asking nothing but offering everything. Last week, Liam had confided that he was planning to propose on her birthday in December. He'd asked if I thought it was too soon. When you find someone who sees all your broken pieces and loves you anyway, I'd told him timing becomes irrelevant. Now watching them read the article together in my kitchen, I felt Catherine's absence less acutely than usual. She would have loved Sarah, would have appreciated her quiet strength, her patience with Liam's healing process, her refusal to let him define himself by Serena's betrayal. The article brought unexpected consequences beyond the phone calls and speaking requests. 3 days after publication, a letter arrived. Plain envelope, no return address. Inside a single page of notebook paper, covered in shaky handwriting. Mr. Blackwell, I am 81 years old. My daughter has been stealing from me for 2 years. I didn't know who to tell or what to do. Your article gave me hope. Today I called the number you provided. A lawyer is helping me. Thank you for your courage. It gave me mine. A grandmother in Durham. I kept that letter in Catherine's journal. Started a collection. More letters arrived. Some from victims finding courage to act. Others from adult children discovering their parents were being exploited and feeling empowered to intervene. Each letter represented a predator being stopped, a family being saved, a cycle being broken. By autumn, my speaking schedule had expanded to twice weekly, Monday mornings at senior centers, Thursday evenings at community colleges talking to social work students about recognizing elder abuse patterns. Dorothy from my support group started co-presenting with me, sharing her story of financial advisor fraud. You can't just be one old man shouting into the void, she'd said. We need multiple voices, multiple stories. That's how people understand the scope. She was right. When audiences heard both our stories, different perpetrators, different methods, same devastation, the pattern became undeniable. In October, Liam officially proposed to Sarah at Catherine's grave. He'd asked my permission first, standing in my kitchen with nervous hands and hopeful eyes. I know it's only been a year since everything happened with Serena, he'd said. But Sarah is nothing like her. Sarah is real. I know she is, I'd assured him, and your mother would have adored her. Well, he'd placed the ring on Sarah's finger while kneeling on the grass beside Catherine's headstone, both of them crying, telling my wife about their plans. Sarah had said yes before he'd finished asking the question. The wedding was scheduled for next June, small ceremony, close friends and chosen family. Russell officiating. Turned out he'd gotten ordained online years ago for a friend's wedding, Jake handling photography, Diane contributing legal advice on prenuptial agreements that Liam had insisted on. Not because I don't trust Sarah, Liam had explained, but because I never want to put her in a position where someone could question her motives. I want our marriage protected by more than just love. Smart kid. His painful education hadn't been wasted. December arrived with unseasonable cold. Russell and I sat on my porch despite the temperature, wrapped in blankets, drinking hot coffee and watching the neighborhood prepare for Christmas. You've done good work this year, Russell said. Catherine would be proud. I think about that a lot, I admitted. Whether she'd be proud or horrified that I'm sharing our family's worst moments with strangers. She'd be proud, Russell said with certainty. Catherine always said, the worst thing about suffering is when it happens for nothing. You're making sure your suffering means something. Janet, the reporter, called again in mid-December. The Charlotte Observer wanted to do a follow-up article for the one-year anniversary of Serena's arrest. Update readers on Margaret Chen's case. Her nephew had been charged with felony exploitation of the elderly. Share statistics on how many people had contacted authorities after reading the original article. 47 people, Janet told me. 47 people in North Carolina contacted Adult Protective Services or law enforcement after reading your story, citing it as their motivation to finally report suspected abuse. That number doesn't include people who called lawyers or took other private action. 47 families potentially saved, 47 predators potentially stopped. The numbers staggered me. Mr. Blackwell, you've started something bigger than yourself, Janet continued. Other states are asking permission to reprint the article. Support groups are using it as educational material. You've become a voice for a population that's often voiceless. After she hung up, I sat at Catherine's desk and opened her journal, added another entry. Dear Catherine, they want to write another article. Apparently, I've become some kind of spokesperson for elder fraud victims. Me, Marshall Blackwell. The guy who almost lost everything because he trusted the wrong people. But maybe that's exactly why my voice matters. Because I'm not perfect. I'm not invulnerable. I'm just a widower who got lucky, who had good neighbors, who chose to fight back. And if I can help even one more person find their courage, then maybe all of this, the humiliation, the betrayal, the pain, maybe it means something. Maybe that's how we honor suffering, by making sure it protects someone else. I think you'd understand that. I think you'd tell me to keep going, so I will. Love always, Frank? Outside my window, the December sun set early, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Liam's car pulled into the driveway, unexpected on a Tuesday, but welcome. He climbed out with Sarah beside him, both of them carrying shopping bags filled with what looked like Christmas decorations. We thought you could use help with the tree this year, Liam called up to the porch. For the first time since Catherine died, I'd purchased a Christmas tree. It stood bare in my living room, waiting. I watched my son and his fiancée climb the porch steps, arms full of ornaments and hope, and realized something profound. We hadn't just survived Serena's predation. We'd transformed it into something that mattered, and we were still fighting, still protecting, still standing. Sitting here now, reflecting on everything that unfolded over these past months, I find myself wanting to share some final thoughts with anyone who's listened to this journey from beginning to end. Looking back at my own family story, I've come to understand something profound about how family betrayal actually operates in the real world. It doesn't arrive wearing a villain's mask or announcing malicious intentions. It comes disguised as concern for your well-being, wrapped in offers of help, speaking the familiar language of love while simultaneously calculating exactly how much it can extract before you finally notice the damage. I made mistakes that nearly cost me everything. The classic widower's error, I confused my crushing loneliness with clear judgment, mistook my grief for wisdom. When Catherine died, a profound emptiness settled into every corner of my life. I became so desperately hungry for our family to feel whole again, so eager for normalcy to return, that I systematically ignored the small inconsistencies accumulating around me. Those questions that didn't quite align properly. Those moments when my investigator's instincts whispered urgent warnings I actively chose not to hear, because hearing them meant acknowledging painful possibilities. Don't be like I was during those vulnerable months. Don't let your deep desire for family connection and normalcy blind you to the reality unfolding directly in front of your eyes. Here's the truly ironic part of my family story. I spent 40 years building a career on spotting fraud and insurance claims. 40 years. Training myself to recognize patterns, identify inconsistencies, trust documentation over explanations. Yet I nearly missed the most significant fraud of my entire life happening right inside my own home. Why? Because I wanted desperately to believe that family betrayal was something that happened to other people, naive people. Careless people, not to men who'd built their professional reputations on skepticism and rigorous verification. I wanted to believe that Liam's apparent happiness with Lauren meant my own loneliness would finally ease. I wanted to believe that opening my home and my trust to them would somehow fill the Catherine-shaped void in my life. I convinced myself that giving someone my trust was equivalent to giving them my love, that questioning them would somehow diminish the family bonds I was trying to rebuild. The Bible reminds us in the Proverbs 3:5, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding." For many years, I misinterpreted that verse as passive acceptance, as though trusting God meant accepting whatever circumstances arrived without asking hard questions. But I was fundamentally wrong about that interpretation. God gave us discernment for important reasons. He gave us instincts that scream warnings when something feels dangerously wrong. Trusting Him doesn't mean ignoring those God-given instincts. It means having the courage to act on them decisively, even when acting means facing devastating consequences about people we love deeply. Here's what I desperately wish I'd understood sooner. The people closest to you possess the greatest capacity to inflict profound harm, not because they're strangers wearing elaborate disguises, but because you voluntarily handed them the keys both literally and figuratively. Liam possessed my physical house key, my financial power of attorney, and my unconditional trust. Serena possessed something even more dangerous, my desperate psychological need to believe our family was healing, that life after Catherine could still contain joy and meaningful connection. My response to their scheme, what some might call revenge, wasn't primarily fueled by anger, though God knows, I felt enormous amounts of that emotion. It was fundamentally about protecting what Catherine and I had built together through decades of hard work, mutual sacrifice, and genuine love. When I finally gathered comprehensive evidence, when I contacted the FBI, when I stood up in that federal courtroom and testified under oath, I wasn't just saving my bank account balance. I was honoring my wife's memory and refusing to become another silent victim whose story ends with shame and financial devastation. What I've learned through this extraordinarily painful journey is that fighting back doesn't require youth or physical strength or technical expertise you don't currently possess. Fighting back requires something simultaneously simpler and more powerful, the fundamental decision to value yourself enough to take action, to document systematically, to question persistently, to seek help without allowing shame to silence you. Don't be like I was during those early months manufacturing excuses for behavior that deserved serious scrutiny. Don't be like I was thinking that asking reasonable questions equals distrust, or that demanding financial transparency equals paranoia. Family betrayal thrives specifically in environments where victims convince themselves that preserving relationships matters more than protecting themselves from exploitation. Your age isn't your weakness, it's actually your greatest weapon if you consciously choose to deploy it strategically. You've survived decades on this planet. You've successfully navigated profound loss, dramatic change, economic upheavals, personal tragedies that would have broken younger versions of yourself. That survival has equipped you with sophisticated pattern recognition, with hard-earned emotional intelligence, with a finely tuned ability to sense when something fundamental has shifted in the wrong direction. Trust that accumulated wisdom, act decisively on it. If you're currently facing anything remotely similar to what I experienced, if papers mysteriously appear, moved if financial questions feel uncomfortably invasive, if stories don't align properly when you examine them carefully, if someone pressures you toward urgent decisions without providing adequate explanation, please don't ignore those warning signs. You're not being paranoid. You're not too old to understand modern complexities. You're simply paying attention, and attention literally saves lives. I think about the other victims frequently: Theodore Kowalski, who lost everything at 73, the widow from Ohio, whose husband's heart gave out from the shock, Margaret Chen, who almost lost her home to her own nephew. Each of them trusted someone. Each of them ignored small warning signs because acknowledging those signs meant shattering their perception of family, of safety, of the people they thought they knew. I understand that reluctance now in ways I never could have before experiencing it myself. But here's what I want you to understand. Your reluctance to confront uncomfortable possibilities is exactly what predators count on. They study human psychology. They understand that people will perform extraordinary mental gymnastics to avoid believing that someone they love could deliberately harm them. They weaponize your love, your loyalty, your desire for family harmony, and they do it without remorse, without hesitation, moving from victim to victim with practiced efficiency. The family story I've shared with you isn't unique. It's a pattern repeating itself in communities across this country every single day. The names change, the specific tactics vary slightly, but the fundamental dynamic remains consistent. Vulnerable people, often elderly, often isolated, often grieving, become targets for individuals who view relationships as transactions and families as opportunities for financial gain. Breaking that pattern requires collective action. It requires people like you who've listened to this entire narrative to share what you've learned with others who might need this information. It requires building communities where asking questions isn't seen as accusatory, but as responsible. It requires normalizing conversations about financial exploitation, so victims feel empowered to speak up before they lose everything. Thank you for walking this entire journey with me, from that terrifying night at 2:03 a.m., through courtroom testimony, to the ongoing healing that continues today. Your attention to these issues matters more profoundly than you might realize. I genuinely want to hear from you. Drop a comment below, sharing what resonated most powerfully. Or tell me, would you have recognized these warning signs in your own family before catastrophe struck? Your perspective could help someone else recognize their own dangerous situation. If this family story connected with you emotionally or provided valuable insights, please consider subscribing so you won't miss future narratives exploring these critical issues affecting our communities. Every subscription tells me that these conversations matter, that shining light on uncomfortable topics serves a purpose beyond my own healing. One important final note before we part. The narrative you've just experienced contains creative storytelling elements designed to illustrate broader patterns of elder exploitation, blended with educational content about protecting yourself and your loved ones. If this approach to exploring serious social issues doesn't align with your content preferences, I respect that completely. Please feel free to explore other videos that better serve your needs and interests. Remember, you have people who genuinely care. You have power you haven't yet deployed. You have legal rights worth exercising. You have strength that decades of living have forged into something unbreakable. Use them all. Fight back when circumstances demand it. Protect yourself without apology. You're not finished yet. None of us are.